While being escorted to school by her fiancé, Gazoon saw a group of male students happily smoking cigarettes together. When her boyfriend suggested they refrain from smoking, saying that kids these days are scary, she replied, "If adults are afraid of children, then the world is over, and I'm a teacher too." Sometime later, Hoa Jin had to appear in court to observe the trial of a delinquent male student, a person who always terrified his friends and teachers at school. This was the very person who had heartlessly stabbed teacher Choi Gazoon in the stomach. When asked to make a final statement, the student said, "I loved teacher Choi Gazoon." Then the court began to pronounce the sentence. Considering the defendant was a minor and came from a difficult family background, the court sentenced him to a minimum of 2 years and a maximum of 4 years in prison. A moment after seeing the male student being escorted out, Hoa Jin immediately sped his car towards the man who had killed his fiancée. Then a collision occurred, but it was because the teacher Gazoon's father had driven up to collect the money, so the young man could only scream and watch as the insignificant male student remained unharmed after stealing his fiancée. Then Mr. Choi asked Hoa Jin if he did that, would Gazoon be able to come back to life? Gazoon always said that if adults were afraid of children, the world would be over. "Let's choose the right way," as she said. "I will soon become the Minister of Education and I will establish the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights. That is the way I have chosen for my Gazoon. If you can't bear it anymore, just come find me and your son-in-law can wipe away your tears." Sometime later at Dan High School, a teacher was asking a male student to put away his phone. But the more nervous one said online learning was much more beneficial. "Teach properly. I'll tell my dad to get you a permanent position. Just keep teaching." Then the young master, trembling even more, led Duck around the school to introduce him. And Duck had to admit that I was the new bully at Korean Goat School. The next day, when the male student Gong Minute went to the administrative office, the teachers were coming out at that moment, and Gong Minute didn't dare to tell the story he wanted to report. Then Gong Minute stood listening to the teachers' conversation. 4 disobedient students, giving them disciplinary points as per regulations is the easiest thing to do. Since corporal punishment was banned, schools are practically ruined. Just scolding them a little is accused of violating students' human rights and child abuse. Not getting stabbed to death by students is already a blessing. There have been tons of cases of teachers being stabbed by students. Sometime after Gong Minute wandered to school, he saw his frienda standing on the rooftop enjoying the breeze. After a loud noise, all the students ran away in panic, and Gong Minute saw blood flowing down to his legs. Soon after, police cars arrived at the school because of suicide. And Gong Minute imagined himself going to school carefree because the others had been arrested by the police. But then they handed the bullying position back to Gong Minute, and the gang leader Jun loudly asserted that the police wouldn't be able to do anything to him. And the rules at this school remained unchanged. So Gong Min's hellish days continued. When the boy stood enjoying the breeze on the rooftop, he didn't have the courage to lose everything like his friend. Then Gong Minute returned to class and was kicked by Gangshu, who said, "I'm itching to fight after finishing my MMA training." After a while of fighting Gong Minute, he challenged Gong Minute to fight him back. While he was closing his eyes and issuing the challenge, he received a powerful blow that made him stagger. When he opened his eyes, he saw a man in a suit standing in front of him. When Gangsu arrogantly asked who he was, Hoa Jin slapped him again for daring to talk back to an adult. After regaining his balance, Gangsu ran over and received another blow that sent him tumbling down the hallway and staggering to his feet. Yet he stubbornly threw another punch, so Uncle Hoa Jin slapped him so hard he flew several meters away. Then Uncle made a silent gesture and went to tell the school bully not to make noise in school. And Junhun also confidently walked over, so Hoa Jin said, "Today I've been transferred to this school." Junhun immediately said that teachers shouldn't hit students. Then he ordered his gang members to film it. When Gangsu woke up, he challenged the uncle to stop hitting him, so the uncle pulled him up and raised his arm, but didn't hit him gently at all. Despite the live streams constantly playing, the uncle remained unfazed. A little while later, when the principal and teachers arrived, they saw that the gang leader's face was distorted from swelling. When the principal asked who he was, Hoa Jin immediately searched for his official ID card, pulled it out from his shirt, and introduced himself. "I am an inspector from the Korean Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights. This bureau was recently established. We also have the task of exposing some schools that have bribed the police to cover up the cause of the students' behavior." When the principal asked if teachers were allowed to hit students like this, the inspector immediately said, "Of course they are allowed." Inspectors of the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection have special authority, without any limitations on educational methods. To put it simply, those who listen will be taught verbally, and those who only listen when beaten will be disciplined. From today, The Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection will give this school a proper educational lesson. A moment after reading the Ministry of Education's directive, the principal said there must have been a misunderstanding. There's no bullying or school violence here, is there? The students here are very intelligent. The children of famous figures in the political and economic world, and even the son of a high-ranking official, study here. When the inspector asked if the student from Back to Zucks was in 11th grade, I will be the homeroom teacher for that class from today. Then the principal said that actually, in that class there was the son of a congressman, the son of the next presidential candidate, Du Kwong-poo, who was a living power, while you and I are just salaried employees. But Inspector Hoa Jine repeated the saying, if adults are afraid of children, then this world is over. In class, when the gang couldn't find any information about the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection, Jun said, what can they do to me? And the gang member said, we are all under your father's command. Then Inspector Hoa Jine came in and announced that from today I am your new homeroom teacher. Then the teacher started calling roll for each student in the class. When it was the turn of the guy whose face had been beaten up earlier, he only dared to hide behind his classmates. When the inspector called out Yao's name, he trembled, but he remained silent, so the inspector turned to the male student from the North Dike and asked, he's dead, isn't he? Don't you know why Dike did that? When one student said he heard that he committed suicide due to pressure from academic achievement, the inspector asked, isn't it because some of you bullied and isolated Dike to the point that he couldn't bear it anymore and died? When the student from the North Dike said that he was too stupid and didn't want to take any exams, the inspector grabbed his lower lip and pulled him forward. When the inspector let go, this young hooligan fell backward, to the back. Then when this guy rushed forward, the inspector immediately taught him a lesson with a book. Then the inspector said, even though you lost a friend, you still seemed calm and not remorseful. But now you seem a little remorseful, don't you? But remorse shouldn't only be done with your head, but with your body too. The whole class will practice the plank pose. When the inspector counted to 3, the students started to follow suit. But the more nervous one ordered them to sit down, so the students returned to their seats. Then he said to the teacher, it seems these kids are more afraid of me than of you. The inspector said, then just scare him, and the whole class will be scared too. But the more timid one said, I don't know what fear is, so the inspector pinned his head down on the desk. The more timid one struggled and asked, teacher, do you know who you're messing with? And the inspector said, you're messing with the students, of course. From now on, every single day will be hell for you. Then the inspector continued to raise his arm and slammed it down on the table, making the boy tremble even more and go deaf. When the inspector counted to 3, the spoiled male student opened his eyes and then lay down to apologize, so all the students in the class had to follow suit. A little later, during lunchtime, the more nervous guy and his 2 accomplices snatched a student's lunch tray and proceeded to cut in line to get food first, but they ran into an inspector dressed in a chef's uniform. When the inspector asked if they were lining up in the correct order, the more nervous guy said no one had said anything. So the inspector said that power is indeed scary. But students shouldn't have power. If you want to eat, go to the back of the line. Dong Hun immediately used his bare hands to grab a handful of sausages and put them into his lunch tray. As soon as he threw the lunch tray away, the inspector kicked him in the butt, causing the food to spill all over the school bully. The inspector said his clothes were all dirty. Even if he was the son of a congressman, he couldn't possibly have a dozen uniforms, could he? Then the inspector used the mop to wipe the floor for the more nervous guy and then placed it on the gang leader's head and asked if anyone wanted to take photos or short videos. This was our more nervous guy who spilled it, so he has to clean it up himself. Now let's go back to eating. The male student Gong Minute was bewildered by this scene. A while later, while Gong Minute was cleaning the school bully picked a fight with him to shift the blame for the recent humiliation he had suffered, and then he left. In the evening, someone rang the doorbell at Jun's house. When his father pressed the button to ask who it was, the inspector immediately asked, is this the house of the leading presidential candidate? When invited into the house by Congressman Yao, the inspector spontaneously ate the decorative fruits on the table, and the more timid guy also came out, so the teacher immediately reported to the more nervous parent, our family refused to clean up and left. All students are equal, students should not hold power. The slogan of the recent election campaign was people must be people, politics must be politics. My philosophy is similar, teachers must be teachers, students must be students. If a student refuses to clean up, I will handle it in a teacher's way. The more nervous guy then said, he wants to falsely accuse my son of something. That's the problem. The inspector immediately stood up and pulled Jun Hun's ear to discipline him. When the congressman said he was making a mistake, the inspector promised he would discipline Jun Hun carefully and not make any mistakes. Then the elevator was closed. After that, Jun Hun had to scrub the toilet himself. The inspector immediately went to check and asked them to finish cleaning up the remaining cleaning supplies. After HOA Jine left, the school bully hit his head on the toilet. The next day, Congressman DI went straight to the classroom and asked the inspector to explain more about Jun's head injury. When HOA Jine said I didn't tell her to bang her head on the toilet, the congressman immediately asked, "Do you think my child harmed herself to falsely accuse you? It seems you don't know what fear is, do you?" The inspector then said, "If a doctor is afraid of patients, they can't cure them. How can a teacher who is afraid of students educate their children?" The inspector then asked, "Do you understand the meaning of me directly confronting them?" So the inspector also said that the protection of pedagogical rights belongs to the state. He has to confront the state. A little later, the male student Gong Minute saw all the teachers respectfully seeing Congressman Yao off. Immediately afterwards, two of Jun Hun's henchmen came to cause trouble, claiming that Gong Minute had reported them to the Education Rights Protection Bureau. Then Jun Hun also appeared and repeatedly kicked and punched Gong Minute. While enduring the beating, Gong Minute looked towards the rooftop where his friend December had jumped. In the afternoon, Gong Minute stood in that same spot, but when the inspector caught him and swung him over the edge of the cliff, Gong Minute begged the teacher to pull him back inside. After leading Gong Minute down to the gymnasium, Hua Jin said, "It seems like you get beaten up by Jun's gang every day, huh? How long do you intend to keep being beaten?" And Gong Bin also asked if fighting back would make things better, so the inspector said, "Who told you to fight back? Just run. If you can't keep running, then tell an adult. Just keep talking until you meet a good adult. There are still good adults in the world. So from today, start practicing running seriously." Then Inspector also ran right next to him to urge Gong Minute to train his physical fitness. A while later, when they arrived at the convenience store, Gong Minute said to Inspector, "They are incredibly strong. Jun's father could easily destroy a family if he wanted to." So the inspector told him not to worry. "I also have a very strong support system. You also have a very strong support system. For students, the support system is the teacher. Who else could it be?" And Gong Bin also said, "Thank you, teacher." A little later, when the inspector asked why he didn't tell his parents, Gong Bin remembered that his mother was always away from home and replied to the inspector that he didn't know. Then the two teacher and student continued eating noodles and chatting. Old Senator DI burst into Minister Choi's office and asked if it was true that he had established the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights. Why did he create that thing? The minister replied that he did it because he felt guilty. "Do you remember, Congressman? 2 years ago, a teacher was murdered by one of his own students. To prevent that from happening again, I established the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights." The old congressman then asked why I was causing trouble at my son's school. That inspector went too far. "If we make that public, the public will criticize us fiercely. Wouldn't you have to withdraw from politics because of this? A father can do anything for his child." After giving the warning, the old congressman left. Immediately after the book launch of the veteran Congressman DI, reporters continuously received letters accusing Congressman DI of bribery to secure local election nominations and sexual harassment. So when the veteran congressman appeared, reporters kept asking him if he had ever bribed to get a local election nomination. Someone accused him of harassing female secretaries, right? Then Congressman Yao was escorted into the room by his subordinates to face the consequences. But he saw Minister Choi waiting in a hall, so Congressman Yao asked, "What did you do? Who ordered you to do this?" The minister replied, "It took me 2 years to establish the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights." 2 years is quite a long time, and Minister Choi secretly reviewed the investigation reports of Congressman Yao that had been previously concealed. At this time, when Congressman Yao said that he and I were on the same side and in the same party, Minister Choi immediately said that in education there was no such thing as his side or my side. "Your wrongdoings are not few either." Congressman Yao angrily asked, "There are plenty of people out there who are worse than me. Why are you targeting me?" And the minister also said that you have to fall so that your son will fall with you. You should have taught that kid a proper lesson. After saying that, Minister Choi walked out and passed through the crowd of reporters. When the reporters tried to rush in, the old congressman's bodyguards closed the door. The media immediately reported that the motion to arrest Congressman Yaro Guangpilu had been passed by the National Assembly. Public opinion also reflected on the incident where the son of Congressman Yao was accused of causing school violence and driving classmates to extreme choices. This incident, which was about to be buried, was exposed through an investigation by the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. Upon seeing this news, Hua Jine immediately said that this could spread to political issues, but the minister said, "Whether it's bullets or missiles, I'll take them all. You hurry up and finish the job." Then the inspector left. The next day, Jun Han went to school after his father had been arrested. Immediately afterwards, he was bullied by 2 of his accomplices wearing crowns, so he angrily stormed out amidst the chatter of his friends, saying that without a father, he'd become a small fry. Dong Minute looked towards the bullying stick and the empty table of his friend Dazux. Then, When the boy stood looking up at the spot where it had fallen, Dong Minute immediately knelt down to apologize to his friend. And the inspector also placed a white flower branch on the ground and said it wasn't his fault. When the inspector helped him stand up, Dong Minute said that when Duck became the victim of bullying, he thought he was lucky. When he vomited, he laughed without thinking, because he thought he had escaped this hell. He was no different from them. The inspector said, "You are very different. You were bullied for no reason. The culprits are the bullies and the adults who knew but prevented you from speaking out. So don't regret it, and don't blame yourself anymore." Dong Minute heard this and burst into tears. Suddenly, all the students ran out of the school in panic. Inside, the trembling guy was shaking all over the classroom. Then he went outside and locked the door. When he continued to act wildly, the inspector kicked him in the butt. So the students locked in the classroom breathed a sigh of relief. The inspector asked, "You still haven't repented, have you?" When the inspector lit the lighter, the trembling boy tried to crawl away, but the inspector still threw the lighter down, causing the fire to start running towards the school bully. He tried his best to run away. When he was surrounded by fire, the bully begged for his life. "I know I was wrong, please spare me." Finally, the inspector used the fire extinguisher to put out the fire. When the students came forward, Jun immediately asked why they treated me this way. So the inspector asked back, "Why did you treat Dazux like that?" Then the inspector grabbed him by the collar and said, "Dazux is just as afraid of dying as you are, but he still chose to do it because of scum like you." And before that, when Dazux's father came to school, the principal said that if he was bullied by his friends, he should just transfer schools. Then, when the father wore a sign protesting that his son was being asked to transfer schools because he had offended the son of a congressman, the old congressman Yao also saw it, so immediately after that, Dazux's father suddenly had all his orders cancelled by his partners, so he knelt down and begged the worm to spare his father and promised to do whatever he asked, so the worm told him to go die. Now that Jun has been released, the inspector said that by receiving back everything, you will understand the consequences of your actions and be held accountable for them. That is what the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights pursues, which is true education. But no matter how much responsibility you bear, Descartes cannot be brought back to life, and you must carry this burden for the rest of your life. That is only fair. You should live in the hell you created. And the more trembling one also bowed his head and burst into tears. Soon after, when the police conducted an investigation, they arrested the three bullies, causing a serious rift in the friendship between the three of them. When reporters burst into the room, they found the esteemed principal hiding under the table, and the truth about Jun's school violence has been publicly posted on the website of the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection. Therefore, the father was somewhat comforted because his son's distress was understood by others, and friends also offered flowers and gifts to commemorate him. And when the inspector left the school after dealing with Jun, no one saw the inspector at DH High School anymore. The next day, protesters gathered in front of the Ministry of Education building to demand the dissolution of the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights, because it had violated the human rights and physical integrity of students. Upon observing this scene, the minister immediately asked the inspector not to be filmed again. When HOA Jine said, "Uncle, you said before that you would block both bullets and missiles for me," the minister replied, "You can block bullets and missiles, but you can't block videos. To remove a video, you have to send a letter to the US. And you intentionally let yourself be filmed, right?" Then it was time to leave, so the minister went outside. When surrounded by reporters and repeatedly questioned about the Education Protection Bureau's disregard for students' human rights, the minister immediately said that the current Korean education system has failed. Children rely more on tutoring than traditional schools and consider cram school teachers more like their homeroom teachers. Gambling and disguised prostitution have appeared in schools now. Even violent gangs are emerging. Children today no longer respect teachers, and teachers are afraid of students. With teachers' rights collapsing like this, how can normal teaching and learning take place? There are still children who rely solely on traditional schooling because they lack the means to attend extra classes. Therefore, the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection will use the harshest measures to protect the right to teach and learn for teachers and students. Then the minister went to the camera and spoke firmly. "O you who obstruct sacred compulsory education, the defense of pedagogical rights will not stand idly by." Senator Lai and his assistant were very excited when they saw this news and congratulated Chairman Hoang because the opposition party's opponent, Senator Yaro Guangpilu, had fallen from grace. The Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights, which was supported by the opposition party, is now facing public backlash, and the chairman of the Korean party has suggested abolishing the protection of teachers' rights to prevent future problems. At this moment, a male student wearing pristine white shoes is gently moving to avoid puddles of water. Then this male student went to Google One High School, ranked as one of the 3 most notorious high schools in Korea and associated with many nicknames such as the #1 gangster training school and the #1 school avoided by teachers. Immediately, the bespectacled male student was hit by the students' cars, and they all rushed into the school. A while later, the male student went inside the school. It was nothing short of a battlefield. The long-haired male student called out to the new male student and was about to throw a punch to teach him a lesson, but the bespectacled boy managed to pay the protection money. When the long-haired man checked the amount, the boy asked for a receipt, so the long-haired man grabbed him. Then he threw one shoe at the new boy and told him to find the other shoe himself. A little later, this male student had to stand in front of the school bullies, all covered in dirt, and the male student introduced himself. "My name is Bong." Then the teacher showed him his seat. When the teacher asked him to open his book, one of the bullies prevented him from opening it. Then the whole class announced that they hadn't brought books. When the teacher said he would read to the students, the gang leader tapped his foot on the table and ordered the teacher to go photocopy it for them. Then he kicked the table and said that all the other teachers did the same thing. And the gang members also stood up to intimidate him, so the teacher said he would go photocopy it. Then the gang leader suggested that everyone go do their assignments, so the student thugs each grabbed a tool used for repairing bicycles. Then they started shouting to begin their attack. In another classroom, the long-haired, tattooed guy was asking the teacher to draw him a Buddha tattoo. When the teacher said it was during class, Sam grabbed his arm. Suddenly, the two thugs smashed the glass door and started taunting and challenging. The long-haired guy accepted the challenge and asked his gang members to film it. Immediately afterwards, both groups started fighting like two real gangs. When the male student GE tried to dodge, the gang leader Song Hoon suggested he step forward and fight. Then GE was punched by the long-haired guy who had just received protection money that morning. When the male student Hongdu spoke up to talk, GE immediately asked why they were fighting like that. So Hongdu explained that they were trying to get selected. That short-haired guy, Bak Song Hoon, was the gang leader of their automotive department, and the long-haired guy was the gang leader of the electrical department named Choinbom. They had to win to get selected. And GE also asked who was recruiting them. At the same time, the inspector was being told by the principal about the ringleader of the 12th grade, Jang WH. He goes to school if he wants to, and skips school if he doesn't. He organizes fights and extorts money at the slightest provocation. I wish he would never come to school again. He got hired before graduating, so he lives a very extravagant life. He has an expensive motorbike and designer clothes, and he drinks imported liquor a lot. I heard he earns several $1,000s a month, so everyone wants to catch the eye of World Hup to get recruited, so they keep fighting like crazy. Outside, the short-haired guy is the loser. When the long-haired guy was about to swing his stick, his henchman announced, "World Hup texted you." When he read the message that the interview was in 2 days, the long-haired guy with the bomb print felt extremely excited because he was about to be hired. The defeated guy was extremely angry. Inside, the principal also said that because we teachers couldn't handle it, we contacted the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. But when will the other inspectors arrive? Hohen said, "I'm alone." The principal then asked, "How can you handle those thugs alone?" Even the physical education teacher, a former national judoka, had his bones broken by them. This isn't just teaching anymore, it's a war against crime. Hoa Jone heard this and said, "If it's a war, then people will really die. But don't worry, teacher, because the kids will study hard and behave themselves." The gang leader Song Hoon began to vent his anger at defeat on the weaker students in the automotive department. When the gang leader asked what he was doing at this school, the male student Hongdu said that he wanted to study automotive engineering to get a job, but the gang leader said that World Hup was a big company, and fighting was an achievement to get hired. Then he pulled out Hongdu's school bag and poured soda on his auto repair textbook. After that, the gang leader suggested that Hongdu fight the new male student. Whoever loses will become a fighting power tester. When GE asked what a fighting power tester was, the gang leader said, "Just lose and you'll find out." When he shouted, Hongdu grabbed GE and said, "Just hit me, otherwise, both of them will get beaten up." Then Hongdu voluntarily fell down to accept defeat. The gang leader then pushed Gond aside and suggested that his subordinates score points with WH Hup, and Hongdu had to become a fighting power meter. Every time he received a punch, Hongdu had to score the force of the punch he just received. A little while later, GE came to help Hongdu, the male student, and help him carry his backpack. Then, after being taken home by his new friend, Hongdu invited GE into his house to eat noodles. So GE went into Hongdu's house and noticed that his friend was very serious about studying auto repair. Then Hongdu brought out a pot of noodles, and the two of them ate noodles and chatted together. And Hongdu also suggested that his new friend eat kimchi. His mother makes it at the restaurant. The kimchi there is delicious. Then Hongdu's mother went home and she was very happy that her son brought a friend home to play. While his mother was taking a shower, Hongdu stuffed newspaper into his mother's shoes and said that if he did this, the newspaper would absorb the moisture very well because it would be uncomfortable to wear wet shoes in the morning. The next day when Hongdu went to the automotive department, he saw the gang leader lecturing other weaker male students. The inspector immediately appeared and asked, "You get beaten every day, so why are you so enthusiastic about coming to school?" So Hongdu replied, "Well, this is a school anyway, but who are you?" And Hoa Jin also said, "I'm an inspector from the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. I've investigated you a little, so just go to school. From now on, I'll make you study until you're fed up." Then a bully pushed the male student to the front of Mr. Than Tra, and it turned out that there was a camera attached to the student's glasses, and it recorded the entire bullying scene by the Duko gang. So Mr. Than Tra also received these videos, and actually, this male student is the civil servant G. The day before G came for the interview, Hua Di thought this babyface was very suitable to be a student, so she hired him. Now, when taking pictures of the civil servant, Hua Jin immediately asked him if he could run fast. Immediately, the civil servant rushed into the canteen and loudly cursed at them, but the thugs just laughed, which embarrassed G.E. But then the civil servant turned back and continued to curse. "You playboys! You brainless idiots! Eat this of mine!" The hooligan then offered a reward of 100,000 gold to whoever caught him first. So the school bullies chased after the civil servant, and G.E. continued to provoke them to lure them in. When they dragged him into the gymnasium, the civil servant was hiding behind a table. Suddenly, the inspector chained the door shut, and Hoa Jin introduced himself as an inspector from the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. Then the two gang leaders from the two departments came forward and agreed to beat up the inspector and accept being expelled. Hoa Jin then said, "Who gave you permission to drop out of school? It cost at least 65 million for each of you to get to this school. Is it worth spending tax money to raise thugs like you? Is it the blood of the people? Of course not. Now you only have 3 choices. 1 is to return the money and go wherever you want. 2 is to knock me down." Then Duong Hoang walked out. Song Hoa immediately interrupted and chose the second option. Then all the thugs unanimously agreed to fight. When they charged forward, the inspector kept his hands in his pockets and continuously dodged the blows. Then inspector started using one hand to take down each of the thugs. After asking for some armpit hair from one thug, Hoa Jin immediately signed on the armpit of another. Next, she drew on the face of the blonde man. When a man chained her by the neck, Hoa Jin flicked her pen to attack and managed to get rid of the man restraining her from behind. When the two gang leaders rushed forward, the inspector gave each of them a blow to the armpit. When they still stubbornly charged forward, the short-haired guy was hit with a chair by the inspector and trapped in the chair. The long-haired guy narrowly avoided being punched in the face. Then he was hit again in the armpit and fell to the ground. The inspector then went and sat on the chair holding the gang leader and read out the third option. If neither of the above 2 options worked, then obediently finished the course. And the young man with the official badge also stepped out. After that, the inspector proceeded to announce the schedule for each lesson of the day. When the long-haired guy asked why there were so many classes, the inspector said they had to make up for the classes they had missed. Once they had completed all the classes, he would let them graduate. The orientation session would end here. He would call the teacher in. When the two gang leaders brandished chains and weapons, the inspector easily neutralized them and wrestled both of them to the ground. So the gang members quickly sat down at their desks. A while later, the teacher went to the gymnasium to teach. When the inspector opened the door, the teacher saw that every single one of them had pain in their armpits. Then when the teacher asked them to open their textbooks, the short-haired gang leader said he didn't have a book. And all the gang members joined in, and the inspector realized that Hongdu was the only one with a textbook, so he said we would share the textbook in the way Rose-san did. Then Hongdu wrote the contents of the textbook on the board. The inspector then started a 3-minute countdown and asked everyone to take notes without missing a single word. When the long-haired guy said he didn't have a pen and raised his middle finger, the inspector suggested using blood to write. Immediately afterwards, the principal was startled by a blood-curdling scream coming from the gymnasium, and the long-haired boy was diligently copying notes with his bandaged finger, while his henchmen immediately searched for pens to avoid similar injuries. When time was up, the inspector erased the board and began giving a punch to the armpits of those who hadn't finished copying. That's why during the next lesson, everyone was highly focused, but the short-haired gang leader wrote like a chicken scratching at grain and then shouted loudly, "Why do I have to learn all this nonsense? It's useless for life." The inspector said, "That's a great idea. From now on, we'll only learn things that are useful for your lives." Immediately after that, the teacher proceeded to teach practical car repair knowledge, but the two gang leaders were only talking amongst themselves, so the inspector suggested that they get out and fix the brakes. When they refused, the inspector grabbed them and shoved them into the car one by one. Then the inspector sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. After that, he sped off, while the two kids in the back didn't have seatbelts to wear. Then the inspector spun the car around and swerved continuously. When the inspector turned around to talk, the two gang leaders warned of an obstacle ahead. Just as they were about to hit the bulldozer, HOA Giant swerved the car and it flew off the ground, and the students all came out to admire this display of skillful driving. After letting the two gang leaders experience the full sensation of back-and-forth maneuvering, the inspector drove straight into the school but steered and stopped the car perfectly. Then the inspector got out and said, "There is no such thing as a useless lesson in this world," and all the students applauded in unison to praise the inspector's driving skills. A while after Hongdu started teaching about changing car oil and brake systems, Songhone grabbed him by the neck and asked, "Who do you think you are to lecture me?" Inspector Fan kicked him in the leg and was about to give him another lecture, but Hongdu intervened and helped him out. When the teacher asked why he was defending them, Hongdu said that if anything happened, this class would be cancelled. "For me, every minute and every second of class is precious." In the evening, the inspector chained the door and sat outside to guard. Meanwhile, the two gang leaders were busy removing the iron bars of the toilet. When the civil servant went in, the gang members grabbed him to search him and took a multi-purpose knife. The long-haired guy then used it to unscrew bolts and used the civil servant as a shield. After opening the iron bars, they suggested that GE come along because they were afraid the new male student would tell Than Tra. At the bar, W. Hup was interviewing each of the school bullies. Then he waved his hand to call two school gang leaders over. After the two gang leaders bowed enthusiastically, the long-haired guy reported a problem that had occurred at the school. Then he whispered something into the ear of the leader. Then, WH who went into the room to drink with the other Sams and called the three students in to take a commemorative photo together. At the same time, when the inspector returned to where the students were doing their self-study, he found that the two gang leaders had disappeared. But then these two brazenly appeared right behind him and led the official inside. Then they said, "Now you're finished, teacher, kneel down and beg for mercy." Immediately, World Hup drove his motorbike in and circled around amidst the cheers of the school bullies. Then he stopped his motorbike in front of the inspector, put on his helmet, and confidently lit a cigarette without a filter. After throwing the cigarette down, he threw the helmet down and charged forward to attack. But all his moves were seen through by the inspector. When he tried to turn around and trip the inspector, HO Jine pushed him aside with one hand. So the school bully grabbed the inspector and was about to burst into tears, but HOA Jine used both hands to cover her head. When the inspector landed, he closed his eyes, so the group of hooligans cheered loudly, and the guy named WH who also declared that from today onwards, "Whoever dares to hit you guys, I won't let them get away with it." Just mentioning his name makes everyone scared. When the gang members kept shouting the name World Hup, the inspector clapped and shouted along. When the inspector approached, the gang members immediately retreated out of fear, and the inspector also asked, "Do you know why I brought you here? Because you are the teaching tool to teach them." And before that, the inspector had devised a plan to bring this ringleader here because it was necessary to root out the problem completely. When the principal asked how to summon him, the inspector said, "Just beat up the gang members and they will immediately tell their superiors." At this moment, when W. Hook rushed forward, Inspector Than flicked him on the forehead. Then came another powerful flick that made the gang members wince in pain, a blow meant for their boss. But W. Hook still confidently said, "You're dead for sure. My brothers are coming to reinforce you." When Inspector Than heard this, he gave another blowjob, then dragged W. Hop outside to prepare to welcome his gang members. Outside, the gangsters had also arrived. When they tried to cross the fence, Inspector Than asked them to stop. While the inspector was talking to the ringleader, W. Hup moved to dodge the bullets and the inspector asked him to step back a little further. Then the inspector said, "If you weren't students, I wouldn't need to be so lenient. This is my first and last warning. The school is a place for learning. Besides students and teachers, no one is allowed to enter. If you take even one step forward, the war will officially begin." The ringleader immediately waved his hand, ordering his subordinates to climb over the fence. Then the inspector also ran over, threw a flying kick, and knocked down the fence. Then HOA Giant continued to use his bare hands to teach each gangster a lesson. And in W. Hup's eyes, the inspector was like a warrior fighting alone against a gang of thugs in the beautiful splashing water. Even the long-haired man saw a similar scene. After a while, the ringleader crawled to the car to prepare to escape, but the inspector punched a hole in the top and grabbed him by the head, pulling him up. And HOA Giant also gave this gangster a knockout punch and then kicked him in the face to jump out of the car. When the inspector came over, W. Hup immediately moved aside and could no longer stand. The two young gang leaders knelt down and begged Van for mercy, repeatedly apologizing profusely. But the inspector said not to, which made the two gang leaders turn pale. But HOA Giant asked, "Think about who you two need to apologize to." Then the two gang leaders realized the problem and rushed over to apologize to the wandering male student. "Please forgive us. If you forgive us, we can live." and the male student also asked them to stand up. When the inspector asked if he was really okay, the male student burst into tears, sobbing about what he had endured all this time. Then the inspector also told the school bullies that if they didn't want to study, then so be it. That's their life, but don't interfere with other people's lives. Don't think that 1 minute of your life is equal to 1 minute of someone else's. Now it might be the same, but later it will be decades apart. Is that clear? And the students shouted back in response. Then the inspector winked at the civil servant. At this point, the police cars arrived. During the televised discussion, Chairman Hoang questioned Minister Choi. Inspector Nahoa Jain was formerly a captain in the Special Forces unit. His use of a soldier to control students is unacceptable. We will mobilize all forces to dissolve the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. And the minister also said that the level of student violence has far exceeded what we have long thought. There are even gangsters disguised as students, and even gangs formed by students. Should we ask teachers to fight with chalk? We are not fighting with students, we are fighting with monsters. And monsters must be dealt with using monsters. Then Minister Choi announced to the media the results of the Education Rights Protection Bureau's work. We have resolved the issue of infringement of learning rights at Google Technology High School. To prevent similar problems from recurring, we will implement the following measures. From now on, tattoo removal will be prohibited in all schools, and a campaign to remove tattoos for students will be implemented. Motorcycles will be banned from school grounds. At this time, the male student Hong Do was given a new textbook by GE along with a message. He will become a very skilled mechanic, and Hong Do will also study very seriously. As for Goop, he had to sit in prison, and the bar where he used to hang out was raided and many people were arrested. The next day, when Minister Choi went into his office, the young civil servant Bong quietly reported, "During this mission, there were some expenses that needed to be paid. I was robbed about 3 times and lost 40,000, including 500 W, to buy premium coffee from a vending machine. I was also robbed of my white deer pattern shoes worth 125,000. While I was microwaving a 2,200 V sausage, it was also stolen, so the total cost is 167,700 V. Can I get my travel expenses back?" And the minister said, "Then you go ahead and pay." In the evening, Chairman Hoang received an envelope. When he opened the envelope, he saw pictures of Inspector Hoa Jain and Minister Choi attending a girl's funeral. The next day, when Minister Choi entered the office of the Bureau of Teachers' Rights Protection, he was surrounded by subordinates, so he had to constantly sign documents. Then, Hoa Jain presented the next case that needed to be resolved. A teacher was accused of sexually harassing a female student. After this incident, the teacher resigned and immediately took his own life. But there was no evidence, only the female student's testimony. It was judged by the court of public opinion, not by any investigation. The civil servant G immediately posted articles related to the incident that spread rapidly on social media. Influencers started tagging him, which could influence public opinion. So whatever the teacher says is useless. Nowadays, teachers fear social media the most. The first post about this incident was from Hazuji's personal page. She has over 600,000 followers. And before, Juji constantly live-streamed whenever she appeared at school and was enthusiastically supported by the female students in her class. Even her best friend, Exo Dong, joined the frame to take the opportunity to introduce her personal page. A little later, the math teacher announced that class had started and they needed to turn off their phones. And Ms. Dung also politely informed the following fan community that Juj Di said that if she did that, she would be scolded. But the teacher immediately said that class time was for her. And Juj Di also started to hold a grudge in her heart. A while later, while Ms. Dung was in the teacher's room, a colleague gave her a video that had just been posted on Hanzuji's personal page. And that's the video of Ms. Dung pulling on little Exo Dong's hair. Ms. Dung immediately explained that Exo Dong had chewing gum stuck in her hair, so she asked me to cut it for her. The colleagues then said it seemed like they intentionally edited it to make it look like that. Just like Ms. Hoang's case last year, she was just drinking with her college friends, but they posted a video claiming she was going to sell bottles, so many people attacked her for having her personal information leaked. Maybe she held a grudge because she confiscated Hanzuji's phone. The teacher then said, "Let me talk to Hanzuji. After all, I'm her homeroom teacher." Later, when the female student was summoned to the counseling room, the teacher suggested she restore the audio and re-upload the video to clear up the misunderstanding. When Du Di asked the teacher if he thought she intentionally deleted the sound, the teacher said that he had accidentally seen something and that before that, he had seen 2 young female students editing a video and adding gloomy background music to steer the story in a completely different direction. At this point, the teachers also said, "Why do you have such a negative attitude towards teachers? I wasn't like this before. My report card in middle school was always excellent. and I had a very good relationship with the teachers. The student then laughed mischievously and promised to think about it. Then when she went outside, she proceeded to unbutton her shirt to start staging a scene and loudly said in the video that she had been harassed by her homeroom teacher, and the teachers also noticed that countless people had liked this video. Along with that were insults and curses directed at the teacher. Some even suggested putting an ankle monitor on the homeroom teacher and cutting off his genitals. Immediately, the teacher's desk phone started ringing non-stop with calls inquiring about the female student harassment scandal. Then a young man came and asked if they were Hanzuji's homeroom teacher. As soon as the teachers confirmed, this TikToker shouted loudly into the livestream screen, "This is the one who sexually harassed our Hanzuji." Colleagues rushed to stop this vulture, but he still pressed on to continue his lewd behavior. A while later, the teachers didn't dare answer the phone calls from their wives, and their wives kept texting them about the incident. The teachers could only helplessly look at the family photo with their wife and 2 children. Someone had also revealed their home address, so their wives texted them saying that strangers kept coming to their house. The online community started scolding the teacher's wife and children, even tracking down the school where their 2 children were studying. This made the teachers furious for involving their wives and children. After they packed their belongings to leave the school, their car was vandalized with spray paint and insults by the followers. Electronic surveillance circle, go to hell. Until the next morning, colleagues discovered that the teachers had died in the car, but they were still not free from their ordeal even after death because the vultures of the news still came to disrupt the funeral, making the pain of their wives and 2 children even more tragic. There were even people who sent bouquets of flowers with slanderous messages, which made Ms. Dung feel heartbroken knowing that the teachers were in this predicament because they were helping her. Immediately afterwards, Ms. Dung met with Du and asked her to post a video clarifying the situation. Teachers Dongshu are absolutely not like that. Suddenly, this student burst into tears and asked, "So you think I'm the kind of student who lies about being sexually assaulted to bully the teacher? The teacher touched me and even put their hand in that place. And you're telling me to pretend it never happened? I'll do as you say." Then she turned around and spoke into the livestream screen. "Everyone, I can't continue broadcasting today. It was because of this video that the principal had to meet privately with this mischievous female student to beg her not to make a big deal out of the video featuring Ms. Dung. And this girl promised to try to settle things, but she set a condition. Immediately after that, Ms. Dung had to replace the teachers and take over the position of homeroom teacher for this class full of devils. While Ms. Dung was taking attendance, the mischievous EXO Dong tried to text to incite the whole class. She took on the role of homeroom teacher just to harass Du Di. She's truly terrifying. Meanwhile, Ruji was also composing a message to Ms. Dung saying, "Thanks to you, I've reached 500,000 followers." When Ms. Dung looked at her, the naughtiest girl smirked rudely. At this point, when the young official was worried about having to deal with a girl who had over 600,000 followers on social media, the minister immediately said that it had to be done no matter what. Whether it was 600,000 or 6 million, it still had to be done. When the young official asked what role I would play this time, the inspector said that since it was a girls' school, we had to disguise ourselves as girls to infiltrate it. The civil servant heard this and immediately imagined himself appearing in a schoolgirl uniform with long, flowing hair to enter the school. The minister interrupted this exaggerated fantasy and told him he would take care of the regard while Fan Chana would go directly to the scene. But Hoa Jine said that this time she wouldn't be directly involved because she had already recruited someone new. Soon after, Im Hansom also appeared at school, but she couldn't get used to the style of a teacher. When she entered the classroom, Ms. Dung introduced her, saying, "This is our new trainee teacher." When Ms. Dung asked her to introduce herself, Hansom said she was a math teacher. "Depending on what you do, I could be an angel or a devil." But nobody in the market below paid any attention. Then Hanim carefully observed the scene in the classroom. Juam, while live streaming, noticed the trainee teacher staring at her, so she plotted with her accomplice. So, EXO Dong asked the trainee teacher, "Do you have a boyfriend?" When Hanim said she didn't, EXO Dong asked, "Why is that? You're so beautiful. Your plastic surgery was very successful. It must have cost a fortune, right? Can you show us the before surgery photos?" Then she stirred up the whole class, shouting that she wanted to see the photos, so Hansom went down, slammed her hands on the table and said, "Yes, I had plastic surgery, specifically breast reduction surgery, because I like to fight people like this, so I needed surgery to get rid of my breasts. But in our class, no one is the right size to shrink. So I refused to answer the next question." When Ms. Dung suggested we begin the lesson, the student teacher immediately demanded that we confiscate the phones first. "Everyone, please hand over your phones." But Juji continued live streaming naturally, so Hanim loudly asked Juja to hand over her phone. But this girl said, "Even the principal has given me permission to do this in class." When Ms. Hazem coldly told me one last time, "You must hand over your phone," the student suggested that she should tell her fans herself. Hazem immediately kicked the phone up into the air. then spun around and kicked it away, ending the live stream. When Ms. Dung asked if she was crazy, Hazem said that the students in this class were the crazy ones. The school is even more messed up than I thought. Those who want to sit on the heads of teachers, turning teachers into entertainment instead of respect. From now on, all such actions will be considered a violation of pedagogical rights, and you must prepare to face punishment. When little Exo Dong asked if she was overreacting, the trainee teacher immediately reintroduced herself in a fiery manner. I am Inspector Im of the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection under the Ministry of Education. From this moment on, any violation of pedagogical rights at the girls' school will be severely punished. Hand over your phones immediately. Because they were intimidated by this heavy-handed introduction, all the girls obediently handed over their phones, and the gang leader also accepted putting her phone in the bin. The inspector continued, I hope what you hand over is not a secondary phone used to deceive the teachers. I will count to 3 for you to honestly confess. And the civil servant was also pressing the button to prepare to activate the sound. When Hanem counted to 3, the loudspeaker in the school started blaring. And the other phones of the female students also simultaneously received the alert as the technical staff of the Ministry of Education streamed in. On the classroom TV screen, the logo of the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection appeared and read out a special directive. First, from now on the girls' school will be under the control of the Bureau of Protection. Second, there are no limitations on the methods of direction of the Bureau of Protection of Pedagogical Rights. Third, the instructions of the inspector must be strictly followed. Immediately afterwards, Inspector Hua Jin opened the door of the teaching staff office and introduced herself. I'm from the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. In the classroom, while the whole class was in a commotion, the inspector reiterated the final instruction. If we do not obey, we will not be responsible for any disadvantages. Assemble at the stadium immediately. Now, the inspector is also distributing a survey to all teachers on the reality of violations of pedagogical rights and asking teachers to write down the problems they encounter with students but dare not speak out about. If teachers remain silent, we will understand that they are giving full authority to the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection. If adults are afraid of children, then this world is doomed. Wouldn't teachers then have to endure even more? Please don't hesitate. Whenever the teachers think of anything, just write it down and give it to me or give it to Inspector Hanem. Outside, Inspector Hanem is making the female students practice intensely, which makes little Juji extremely angry. A little later, when she arrived at the counter, Inspector Hanem used a soldier's gesture to salute Hoa Jin. When the inspector returned the greeting, they both burst into joyful laughter. Then the inspector introduced the young civil servant to Hanem. But when the civil servant shook hands, Hanem squeezed his hand tightly to test his strength. So the inspector asked the civil servant to be understanding because this girl has a bit of a crazy streak. Then when Hanem asked why he chose him for this mission, the inspector said, because you're crazy. The kids are getting more and more deranged, so we have to use a crazy person to control a crazy person. This is a place where you can do whatever crazy things you want. And Hanem shouted loudly to show his enthusiasm for the job. Then the inspector repeatedly warned him, you mustn't kill anyone. If you want to kill someone, write the word patience on your palm 3 times. Noticing that the junior officer couldn't write the word patience correctly, the inspector suggested that the civil servant teach her how to write it. So GE also wrote the word patience on the inspector's hand, and Hazem shouted loudly to express his gratitude, leaving the civil servant astonished. When the inspector had left, Hazem asked the civil servant, do you know where the most dangerous place in this girls' school is? It's right here. As Hanem went outside, the trashy Jez looked around to see what was dangerous. Immediately, the gang of schoolgirls swarmed in like a hive of bees and proceeded to grab the snacks and devour them on the spot, without paying GE. A little later, Hanem and Ms. Dung entered the classroom and saw the female students preparing to leave. When the inspector asked why they weren't cleaning, Du immediately said that the homeroom teacher said they didn't need to do it, she would do it herself. Right, teacher? When Ms. Dung hesitated, Hanem grabbed the girl by the neck and said, you dare to argue with the inspector? Whoever made the mess should clean it up. After releasing the schoolgirl, the inspector asked everyone to move the tables and chairs back. When the schoolgirls complained, Hazem roared like a lion, so all the schoolgirls obeyed the order. Then the inspector continued to spray soap on the floor and asked them to wipe it until it was as shiny as a mirror. So Du and the other female students had to work hard to clean the floor. A while later, when Ms. Dung was worried that this would be opposed by the parents, the little girl Exo Dong was recording this conversation and posting it online and continuing to badmouth her. Dung wants to be the homeroom teacher instead of the teachers to torment Juji, and now she's even calling the Education Rights Protection Bureau to falsely accuse Juji and us. And Juj Di was also standing above with a very unpleasant face. That evening at the Ministry of Education, while the civil servant was diligently working, the female inspector was sleeping soundly. A little later, the male inspector also entered. so Handsome immediately sat up to greet him. Then HOA Jine suggested that her junior check all the social media accounts of all the female students at the Soviet school to see if there were any posts slandering the teachers. When the inspector had gone out, Handsome called the civil servant who stayed behind and suggested that they clearly distinguish between the two of them who was the commander. When GE said that I was a level 5 civil servant, Handsome immediately said that I was level 1. So from now on, you must follow my instructions. Investigate the social media accounts of all the students at ZO school. Remember to finish it today. Then Handsome lay down again to sleep. After a while, the civil servant had to work hard writing code to search and also managed to download a series of pictures of Ms. Dung that had been posted on social media. The very next morning, the inspector came in with a file and opened the classroom door, startling the female students. And Hanim also asked Ms. Dung to give me some time. Then the inspector showed the social media posts and said, "You have illegally posted photos of the teacher, photos that were photoshopped to mock the teacher with malicious intent. This is a crime that constitutes an offense against honor. From now on, the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection will take action against acts of violating pedagogical rights in cyberspace." When EXO Dong asked if searching through student social media wasn't a violation of human rights, the inspector immediately showed the girl how to submit a complaint to the department's homepage. Now, those who illegally posted photos of the teacher should gather at the stadium immediately. Then these girls were severely punished by the inspector on the grass. Afterwards, when the female students wondered who had called the Education Rights Protection Agency to the school, one female student said it might be because of the teachers that they came. Honestly, everyone knows that teacher isn't that kind of person. And nobody actually witnessed Juge Di being harassed. When Du appeared and asked if they were talking about me, EXO Dong said they were just discussing when the Education Rights Protection Bureau would disappear. So she said they were about to leave and the female students didn't dare discuss it any further. Ms. Dung saw that Rouge Di had taken a picture at her house on her social media profile, which made Ms. Dung quite panicked. She then picked up the picture with a lot of worry in her head. A little later, Ms. Dung went to the academy to apply for a job, hoping to quit her job at the school. But her friend seemed hesitant and said, "There are many girls' school students at my academy. I've heard about your story too. It's no easier here than at the Soviet school. You're a strong person, so if you ever can't try anymore, then come find me." The next day, while Ms. Dung was sitting thoughtfully in the teacher's room, Du brought her books and said to Ms. Dung, "There's one question I can't solve, question number 18. Ms. Dung enthusiastically explained it to her student. And this girl seemed unusually well behaved, and the inspector also saw this and felt very suspicious of this mischievous little girl. A while later, while Ms. Dung was teaching, the female students in the class suddenly spoke up enthusiastically, and Hazem was also very suspicious of Dui's unusual attentiveness. Ms. Dung, on the other hand, was surprised that the students were speaking up so enthusiastically today. When the class was over, the girl immediately followed Ms. Dung and, along with her friends, unanimously praised the homeroom teacher for today's lesson. Hanim then called Ms. Dung back and said, "You shouldn't be so easily swayed. That girl is very cunning and might be manipulating your psychology. You'd better be vigilant." But Ms. Dung said, "Whether it's a lie or the truth, they are changing. And just being like this makes me very grateful to the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection." Then Ms. Dung walked away. The next day, as soon as Ms. Dung left the house, Little Du appeared and said, "Actually, I've wanted to be closer to you for a long time, but it seems you're misunderstanding me, so I don't know where to start to clear things up. I'm sorry, teacher, or maybe we can do a live stream together. I also want everyone to know that we've made up, which will help clear up any misunderstandings you might have about me. While we're at it, could you tell us a little more about the Department for the Protection of Pedagogical Rights? Because of that problem, you guys are suffering so much, so they keep asking me to tell the teacher to help." A little later, Ms. Dung prepared a study plan for each female student. When she got to Juge's study plan, Ms. Dung trembled and had difficulty breathing. As she stepped outside, she ran into the inspector who was waiting. And HOA Jine also spoke up, even though Ms. Dung had to hide for a moment. When they sat together in the schoolyard, the inspector spoke up and asked, "How long do you intend to endure this?" Ms. Dung then showed the inspector the video of her helping Dongshu cut off the chewing gum stuck in his hair and said, "Even if I report and delete that video, it will reappear in other places. So from now until I die, I will always have to live proving that I am not that kind of person. When I can't bear it anymore, I will be just like Mr. and Mrs. Dongshu. I'm so scared of students. Just seeing Du Di holding a phone makes my heart race." The inspector heard this and immediately told the truth. "My fiancée is also a teacher. 2 years ago, she lost her life because of one of her students. At that time, HOA Jine and his girlfriend had taken wedding photos together in preparation for their upcoming wedding. But then Gazoon was lying unconscious in a hospital bed. Then HOA Jine arrived at the hospital. Holding his fiance's hand, Choi Jin sobbed, "I'm here." Gazoon also shed tears, but then her body gave way, so Choi Jin said, "Thank you for waiting for me." Then he began to cry bitterly over the passing of his fiancée. At this point, the inspector also said, "Therefore, I understand very well your fear after what happened to the teachers. That is why I asked you not for yourself, but for the children you are teaching. What do you think we came here for?" When Ms. Dung said it was because of the teacher's incident, Hoa Jin immediately said we came because of her. The children sent a request asking us to save her. These are the students from her homeroom class. Ms. Dung then reviewed the complaint that her students had sent to the security department. When she saw the rumors and defamatory articles constantly spreading about our homeroom teacher, she was very sad and angry, so she had to write these lines. Some people say that Ms. Dung's son John didn't teach the students, causing chaos throughout the school. That is completely untrue. We want to hear her passionate lessons again. Please protect Ms. Dung's honor and rights. Let teachers who quietly dedicate themselves to their students like Ms. Dung not be hurt any further. And before that, the female student Sujin wrote this petition when she wrote in her notebook, "I want to see her smile while teaching," and the girl sitting next to me also wrote that she's so pitiful. Now the inspector also said that among the female students there are some who are afraid of Rouge like her and always think that if she can't do anything, what can we do? So they have to endure it too. The real victims are those children, aren't they? When the inspector offered her a handkerchief to wipe away her tears, he continued to say that she was the only one who could save those children. Relying on us to change the school was only a temporary measure. Teachers are the ones who need to stand on the front lines. Our Bureau of the Protection of Teachers' Rights will protect her, so she shouldn't give up being a teacher. A little later, Ms. Dung returned to the classroom, and the inspector also entered to observe. Ms. Du immediately raised her hand and asked, "Have you thought about the live stream yet? The whole class has decided to participate. We've already announced it on social media. Many people are waiting and ready to share the live stream. Will you do it?" Ms. Dung said, "I'm sorry. I probably can't do it. Now let's start the lesson." When Ms. Dung wrote the exercise on the board, she immediately called out Du Jui's name. "Come up here and solve this problem." But she was only focused on looking at her pimples in the mirror. When Ms. Dung repeated the request, the spoiled girl ignored her. So Ms. Dung had to go down to her desk, put the mirror down, and ask her to come to the board to solve the problem. But this girl laughed mischievously and declared, "I don't like that." When Hanim was about to step forward to teach her a lesson, Ms. Dung said, "This is my lesson." Then Ms. Dung dragged the little bully up to the blackboard to solve the problem. When the little girl said she couldn't solve it, Ms. Dung asked her to hold out her hand. So Hanim asked her if she knew this was child abuse. But Ms. Dung still boldly gave her a whip, causing the inspector to spin around in excitement. When the big sister shouted that she didn't want to do the homework, Ms. Dung continued to grab her hand to give her more whips, causing the teacher and female students in the school to run over to see what was happening. And Ms. Dung also had tears in her eyes. Then she also said to the whole class, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that to you. From now on I will correct my teaching methods. From now on I will make you look at the board and make you listen to the lecture. Every time you make a mistake, I will scold you, and if you still don't listen, I will hit you like this. It's not for me, but for you, because teachers have a duty to guide students in the right direction." When EXO Dong was about to start a protest, Ms. Dung immediately asked her to sit down. The school year wasn't over yet, so the rebellion failed miserably. Then Ms. Dung continued to ask Du to do her homework. When she was about to receive another whipping, she gritted her teeth and did her homework in front of the tearful eyes of her homeroom teacher. Afterwards, when Ms. Dung struggled to walk out of the classroom under the watchful eyes of everyone, the inspector shouted loudly and clapped loudly to praise her. Ms. Dung's son Joe is absolutely amazing. She's truly the best. Right after that, little Du continued to frantically post defamatory articles about her, shaking on social media with her body trembling with anger, but somehow she couldn't upload the images. Then she realized her photos were being deleted because the civil servant was slowly deleting the posts of this girl who thinks she's the queen of the world, which made her extremely panicked. In her frantic typing, she accidentally uploaded the behind-the-scenes clip accusing her teachers from the previous day. She claimed she was sexually harassed by her homeroom teacher. After she finished acting, she wiped away her tears and said, "He's doomed." Then she confidently posed in front of the camera. While she was panicking, Juge Di received another bad news. The account was temporarily frozen at the request of the South Korean government. At this time, when the inspector praised him, the civil servant immediately asked if he could leave work now. But the inspector said there was a welcome party for him today. And the minister didn't say anything, so GE still couldn't go home. Now Ms. Dung has also seen the videos accusing Juji of causing the teacher's mess. Then Ms. Dung also texted the parents to ask if everything was okay. When Ms. Dung continued to call G, she heard the doorbell ring. When she opened the door, she saw little Do standing in front of the door. Ms. Dung immediately invited the student inside and kept asking questions, but Do said, "It should have been her, not old Aunt Dong Shu. It's because of her that old aunt is in trouble. Now nobody believes me anymore. I tried my best to get to where I am now. Have you ever thought about why I did that? Teachers are just a bunch of hypocrites. As you all wish, I will die, but in return, you should die too." When pushing Ms. Dung down, she immediately took out a sharp knife, so Ms. Dung also resisted with all her might. When Du Duwei swung the knife, she almost fell to the ground, but Ms. Dung pulled her inside. But this girl repaid her kindness by pushing Ms. Dung over the railing, but the inspector flew out from downstairs and used his body to lessen the impact for Ms. Dung. When Juja turned around, she saw the two inspectors behind her, and Handsome had to write the word patience on his hand to restrain himself from killing someone. When the inspector asked her to put down the knife, Juji continued to swing the knife, and the inspector tried to write the word patience a second time, but this little girl still didn't stop her murderous actions. When she swung the knife again, the inspector grabbed the knife with her hand and cornered the schoolgirl. After a moment of internal struggle, Hanim decided to let go of the schoolgirl and confiscate the knife. And the civil servant breathed a sigh of relief. The inspector said, "I won't kill her. Think carefully about what you've done up to this point. Continue living in remorse." Then the schoolgirl burst into tears, and the civil servant ran to stop the bleeding for the inspector. After a while, when Ms. Dung and the civil servant tried to wake the inspector up, Hanim said, "You can stand up now. In combat training, this height is nothing." The senior heard this and sat up abruptly, saying, "No wonder it didn't hurt at all." When Ms. Dung asked if he was crazy to be so reckless, H.A. Jin replied, "I promise to protect you." When the civil servant saw the inspector's head bleeding, he fainted from fear, and the inspector tried to wipe the blood away, but it kept flowing like a stream. The next day, the minister signed an agreement with the police to protect the pedagogical rights of teachers. Then the minister also spoke at the girls' school, saying that this time there had been a violation of pedagogical rights on the internet, causing the leakage of personal information and the spread of fake news that damaged the teacher's reputation. The Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection will permanently suspend accounts that harm reputation and violate pedagogical rights and severely punish the perpetrators. After seeing the funeral photos of Minister Choi's daughter, Congressman Lai wondered why this incident wasn't reported in the newspapers 2 years ago. So his assistant said it was because Minister Choi's family wanted to handle it quietly. Meanwhile, Chairman Hoang thinks that if this case is published in the newspaper, he won't be able to establish the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights. Clearly, Minister Choi wants to establish that bureau to avenge his daughter. Call the reporters over immediately. At this moment, the minister is reviewing the messages his deceased daughter sent him. When he saw that his last message had gone unanswered by his daughter, he burst into tears. Then he received a message from his subordinate saying, "Sir, you should watch this." And it was a video of the press conference of the old chairman. And the old chairman mentioned the death of the female teacher, which was also the reason for establishing the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights. Minister of Education Choi Gangsuk is the father of the murdered female teacher, and Inspector Nahoa Jin is her fiancé. A picture from the funeral was also shown. Then the old chairman continued to say that those people were not working for the sake of pedagogical rights but only for revenge for the fate of their daughter and fiancé. At the same time, the inspector also came to the prison to see little G. Then Hoa Jin also left. Now the inspector also saw the press conference of Chairman Hoang. After that, the inspector called out, so Hazem immediately asked if he had seen the press conference. Were those things all true? Hoa Jin said they were all true. Then she suggested that Hanzim quickly go inside for the meeting. Inside, the civil servant was writing a request for a transfer because he thought the inspectors working with him were strange and violent, but Minister Choi read it. And the minister said that the reason he wrote was unacceptable. If he wanted to transfer, he should find a reason that would convince me. A while later, when the meeting started, the civil servant presented an incident that occurred at the Truc Dong Foreign Language School. A male student assaulted a teacher. The informant was a colleague of the victimized teacher and included a video. In the video, when the teacher scolded him, the male student rushed forward and headbutted the teacher in the eye. The next day, 3 inspectors packed their bags and went to Truc Dong Foreign Language School. When Inspector Hoa Jin saw Mr. Tron picking up stones, he rushed over. Then, when the female inspector noticed Mr. Tron's image appearing as the school's representative image, the civil servant said that compared to other foreign language schools, this school had a less prestigious reputation. But since Mr. Tron came to the school from Zhou, the number of students who passed the entrance exams to prestigious schools has increased, and it has become famous as it is now. Teacher Chan was also called a true teacher, and the inspector wondered why such a person was beaten by students. When Hazem turned around, he saw the senior student chatting very warmly and bowing to the smooth teacher. and HOA Jin also seemed to be a big fan of the teacher, so Hazem wondered why HOA Jin was acting like that. A while later, after the inspector showed him the video of the teacher being assaulted by a student the day before, Teacher Tran said, "Can we pretend this never happened? The midterm exams are coming up soon. For Hanang and the other students, this is a very important exam, and the inspector said that if they make a mistake, they should be punished." Then HOA Jin spoke up again, asking the teacher for a favor. "Teacher, could you repeat the last sentence in your online lecture for me? It's I believe in the potential of these students." Then the teacher repeated the gesture of 7 pieces of chalk and said, "I believe in their potential." And Hoen clapped enthusiastically. At this time, him and the civil servant Bong had finished setting up the tools to start working. A little later, the inspector came to the counseling room to meet the male student Ung and showed him the video of him assaulting the teacher the day before, then asked him why he did it. The male student immediately knocked over the tablet and asked if he would let him off if he told the reason. If he wanted to expel him or report him to the police, he could do so. He shouldn't pretend to be curious for no reason. Hazem was extremely annoyed when he heard this, and after the inspector returned to her office, she punched the sandbag to vent her anger, thinking that the arrogant male student probably hadn't done well in school. But the civil servant told her she was wrong. Bak Hun Ung ranked first in the whole school. When reading the report card, Hanim immediately asked, if he ranked first in the whole school, why did he act like that? At this time, when the inspector met with the teacher who had sent the video complaint to the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection, she also said that Mr. Tron was a teacher to other teachers. Many teachers wanted to become a teacher like him. Our school became a prestigious school not only because of his excellent teaching, but also because he stayed up all night with the students. When the students passed their exams, he was even happier than they were. I cannot bear to see such a teacher being beaten. Then, while Mr. Chan was putting the midterm exam papers into the cabinet and locking it tightly, Inspector HOA Jine suddenly appeared behind him and started chatting about how, in the old days, whenever there was an exam, my friends and I would always joke about stealing the exam papers. Mr. Chan also told him not to come in and asked HOA Jine to go outside to talk. Then, when the inspector asked why the student had assaulted the teacher, Mr. Chan explained that a while ago he had opened a special class, but it seemed that the content of that special class didn't satisfy the student. When he was lecturing, the student kept saying, I already learned this knowledge in 10th grade. I taught this in the previous lesson. Why do you keep reviewing that knowledge? Then she also left the classroom on her own accord. This wasn't a class just for Hanang. I also had to consider the abilities of the other students. At the same time, the inspector also showed Hanang's report card and asked why a top student like her would do such a thing. What made her so angry that she ignored the consequences and assaulted the teacher? With this record, she could easily receive a scholarship to a prestigious university. For the past 12 years, she has always been the top student in the entire school. Why would she ruin all the hard work she has put in? Even a poor student like me finds it completely unreasonable, let alone your parents, do they know? More than just hearing his parents mentioned, he immediately became agitated. Over here, Mr. Tron also told the inspector about it. Every year, parents come to the school to participate in a career guidance session. Hanang's parents live far away and couldn't come, so I went to their restaurant. But because the restaurant was so crowded and they were very busy, I just ate and drank like a normal customer and then left. At this point, when the inspector said that I would go and ask the parents directly, Mr. Hun immediately swept everything on the table to the ground, so the inspector grabbed his head and asked, Are you feeling very resentful? If you want help, you have to ask for help. And before that, when Hanang was informed by the school staff member that his tuition for this month had not yet been paid, the boy went back to his parents' restaurant, but it was closed. Because after Teacher Tron arrived, the restaurant had been suspended from business because someone had reported that it was an illegally constructed building. Although my parents were always struggling financially, they still tried their best to find a tutor for me. That day, when Mr. Tron looked at my report card, he asked, You had a tutor, right? Who was it? Immediately afterwards, the tutor announced that he would no longer be teaching me. He quit teaching just as he found out who my tutor was. Isn't that strange? Now, when HOA Jine asks why he's picking up stones, Professor Tran says students often watch online lectures on their phones, making it easy to trip and fall. Getting injured would be a real problem. Hoen heard this and praised him, saying, No wonder people say he should become the director of the Department of Education. But is the director of the Department of Education a higher position or the Minister of Education? Because I'm thinking about switching sides. Then Mr. Tron also asked how Ung would be punished. He did something wrong, so he probably won't be able to avoid punishment, right? And Hoen said to just hand it over to our Education Protection Bureau, future Director of Education. Hajim found this flattering scene very confusing. A little while later, The senior student enthusiastically continued watching Mr. Chan's interview video, so him angrily said, "It seems like you only came here to meet a celebrity, huh? You look very different today. It seems like Mr. Chan Sang-jo is more important than the substance of the incident. Are you suggesting that all the blame lies with the students? It's exactly as people are saying. Because of personal revenge, you always side with the teachers." The inspector then said, "If you have any problems, just stop here." After the senior student walked away, Hazem shouted loudly to vent his anger. The civil servant, upon checking the ranking of the entire 12th grade, realized that the top 11 positions were occupied by the class taught by Mr. Chan, and those ranked from 2nd to 11th were all taking extra classes at Novus Academy. Immediately afterward, the civil servant disguised himself as a student to enter Novus Academy. He also noticed that the classrooms were currently empty. Suddenly, GE was discovered by a lecturer, so GE immediately said that she wanted to register to study at this academy. She was studying at the Truc Dong Foreign Language School. When the lecturer heard the school's name, he said they were no longer accepting students. When GE said that all the classrooms were occupied, the lecturer emphasized that registration was over, so the civil servant walked out. But the lecturer ran after me and asked which class I was in. When I said I was in class 124, the lecturer immediately asked, "So you must know the class president's name, Hano, right?" So I went along with it. But the lecturer said the class president's name wasn't Hano, but Bohan. "How did you know about our academy? Are you really a student?" When the lecturer approached, the male student Hongdu ran up to greet Ji warmly and asked which school he had transferred to. And the lecturer left. Later, while eating together, Ji asked how Goon School was doing, and Hongdu replied that there was still fighting as usual, but no more bullying. Then, two gang leaders rode past on their motorbikes and, recognizing their old classmate, joined them for a meal. The four of them chatted happily and harmoniously, making the civil servant very happy that he had at least done something useful for these students. A while later, while the civil servant was writing a report about the Truc Dong Foreign Language School, he heard shouting outside, so he went out and saw Inspector Hanim running and screaming frantically, upset by Inspector Hohen's actions. Previously, when she was a schoolgirl, Hanim had been chased and attacked by a group of schoolboys, who blocked her path from both directions. At that moment, the soldier Hoa Jin appeared and was provoked by the school bullies. Then the soldier went over and asked Hanim if she wanted his help. To get help, you have to ask for help, right? But Hanim couldn't utter a word. As the soldier walked away, the schoolgirl grabbed him and begged, "Please help me." That's why Hoa Jin went up to the thugs. When the male student asked if the soldier intended to beat up civilians, Hoa Jin immediately said, "Let's do it," and attacked the male students, causing the two female gang members to run away in fear. Then Hoa Jin also reached out to help the female student stand up. That's why Hanim felt utterly disappointed because the image of righteousness of his senior had been tarnished. The next morning, the inspector came to see Mr. Tron and said that something strange was happening. All the students ranked from 1st to 11th in the school were in his class, and they all studied at Novus Academy. Except for Bak Hanang, that academy must be in a difficult position. After all the effort put into teaching, the top student is someone who doesn't even study at the academy, like Kita Hanwang. Yes, nowadays, the students are competing fiercely to recruit the top student from the school to enhance the academy's reputation. If Hanwang can't participate in the competition because of this assault, who will benefit the most? Is it Novus Academy or the female student who will be promoted? And do you know a female student named Hanzuji? Right before this incident, we went to the girls' school. You were Hanzuji's homeroom teacher in junior high. When Mr. Tran said that I didn't, if you remember, Hoa Jin said that Jay was very good at studying and had prepared to enter this Truc Dong Foreign Language School. But because she couldn't participate in the final exam, she couldn't get in. Thanks to that, another student was able to get into Truc Dong Foreign Language School. That's Deng Shudong, who is currently ranked 11th in the school. Why wasn't Rouge Di allowed to take the exam back then? Was it because she didn't have powerful parents like Shudong? You did the same thing to Hanang, didn't you? You deliberately created a special class to take up her study time and intentionally moved her tutor elsewhere. Then you used your connections to sabotage her parents' restaurant in order to get Hanang to attack you. You did everything you could to prevent Hanang from participating in the upcoming exam, right? And before that, when you went to the prison to see RI, the inspector suggested that this girl tell him about teacher Tron Sang-jo. What did he do to you? Du Di heard this and immediately remembered what teacher Tron had said to her back in middle school. Don't think that just because you're first in the whole school you're at the top of society. Everyone has a different level. Both you and your family are only ranked B in this society. And G also whispered directly to the teacher to get him killed. At this point, the teacher said that the female student was a problem student, which is why she wasn't allowed to take the exam. The inspector then said, I never said Hanzuji was a problem student. Just now you said you didn't remember who she was. So how did you know she caused trouble at the girls' school when the old teacher asked, what do you want to do to me? Let's stop this. Then the inspector confirmed that Bak Hanang would definitely be allowed to participate in this exam. The teacher then stood up, uttered a defiant remark, and walked out of the room. Now, Hanang confidently walked into the classroom amidst the chatter of his friends. He caused such a big mess and still dared to come to school. And his friend Deng Shudong also stood up and walked past Hanang. At the same time, Shudong's mother stormed into a restaurant to confront the teacher and demanded to know why Bai Hangang was allowed to continue the exam. She wanted to make up for Shudong's poor performance in the mock exam, saying that in this midterm exam, she had to get first place in all subjects. If things continue like this, I can't promise you the position of director of the Department of Education. Everyone else's children are getting first place. Why is only my daughter Shu not? I've already paid you several times more than others. The teacher then asked, if your child is stupid, what am I supposed to do? Even if I prepared a meal, he wouldn't know how to use a spoon to eat. I could have gotten the position of director of the Department of Education myself without your help. Without me, could Shu Dong have gotten into university? Please just sit there, I'll take care of everything. Now, when the civil servant opened the door to leave, the inspector threw 2 cushions at him to take the beating. Then Hazem kept throwing punches because running around the stadium hadn't relieved his frustration. Then Hazem also said that Inspector Hoa Jine was no longer like the senior I knew. He only knew how to defend that teacher and didn't listen to the students. GE immediately said, that's not true. Ever since visiting Hanzuji, Mr. Hoa Jine has been focusing solely on investigating teacher Tron Sangzon. He asked me to investigate the students under his supervision, so I went all the way to Novus Academy to investigate. When Hazem asked why I didn't know anything, the civil servant said that he told her she wasn't good at deceiving people or lying. Hearing this, Hazem threw away her gloves and continued running and shouting. When the inspector asked why she did that, the civil servant said that she felt guilty towards him, so Hoa Jine suggested that they pay attention to their speed. Then Hazem ran over and asked why he was pretending to be suspicious of the teacher. So Hoa Jine said he hoped his suspicions were wrong. He always hoped to find a teacher like that in the world. Hazem angrily asked why he didn't tell her anything. She had to suspect him. So, the inspector also said we are outsiders? Just like before, that damn gas-footed Joe won't sit still. There's going to be a lot more work to do. Just as the civil servant was about to leave, the inspector asked him to work overtime. Suddenly, the police arrived and told Hoa Jine there was a complaint alleging that he had used violence against innocent students during an investigation at Dahan and Gun School, and people from the prosecutor's office also raided Minister Choi's office to search it, accusing him of abuse of power and violating fair recruitment laws. Later, the news reported that Minister Choi Gangsuk was under investigation for suspected tax evasion. And a teacher spoke out in outrage that the Bureau of Teachers' Rights Protection was attacking an exemplary teacher like Chan Sang-jo. During a television interview, a lawyer also said that it seems the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights was established by the victim's father and fiancé in a case from 2 years ago with the aim of personal revenge. To divert public attention, they shifted their target to a famous teacher like Mr. Tron Sang-jo. After seeing this news, Congressman Lai suggested releasing the article to the press to pressure the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights and place all the blame on Minister Choi. So Chairman Hoang also suggested announcing the opening of the Education Committee meeting. At this time, when questioned by the police about the abuse of power in appointing inspectors, Minister Choi remained silent. While in prison, the inspector told Hanim that the connections of that smooth-talking guy were truly formidable. The prosecutor's office, the police, the media, and even the tax agency all acted in perfect coordination. Even the president's directive couldn't have been implemented so quickly. When Hanim suggested doing something, Hoan immediately said we would definitely be kept here until next week, because next week is the exam at Truk-dong Foreign Language School. Now when Teacher Chan goes to the academy, he is respectfully greeted by the lecturer. When the teacher went to see her, Shu Dong's mother said, "You handled the Education Rights Protection Bureau very neatly, didn't you? Your connections are amazing. And what about my Shu Dong?" The teacher then sent the parent the answers to the upcoming midterm exam and told her to tell Shu Dong to memorize them all. If he can't learn on his own, then I have to feed him. I hope you will help me with my fundraising party as the director of the department. The parent immediately promised that I would fully support the teacher. If this exam goes smoothly, the teacher will be promoted to director of the department right away. Now, while Bong was giving his statement to the police, the minister immediately told him that he was only acting on orders from his superiors, and to release him. Afterward, Bong was also taken to visit his colleagues. The minister then suggested that he print out a transfer request. and I would approve it immediately. When the civil servant told me he had reconsidered, the minister still shouted, demanding that I bring the application here immediately. So GE went home and drafted a transfer application, then brought it to Minister Choi for approval, and the minister also asked HOA Jine to sign it as well. Then the student retrieved the file, bowed, and left. The next day, Shu Dong deliberately bumped into Hanang, laughing mockingly, and Hanang picked up his pen to prepare for the exam. Then the teacher walked into the classroom, opened the sealed exam papers, and distributed them to the students. The teacher then touched Hanang's shoulder and told him to do well on the exam. Then he touched Shu Dong's shoulder, and the girl had already written the answer on her fingers. At the same time, when all three were released, the minister got into the car and left first. Afterwards, the minister was repeatedly questioned by Congressman Lai about exploiting his daughter's innocence for political gain. Was he targeting Teacher Chan to distract public opinion? At this time, when scanning the students' exam papers, the rogue teacher noticed that Shu Dong's result was problematic, so he rescanned it, but the result was still 0, so he reviewed the math exam again. Next came the English exam, and then the old man panicked, ran out of the grading room, and stormed into the classroom, demanding that the exam be stopped immediately. Inspector HOA Jine appeared and said the exam wasn't over yet. "Sit down and continue," he said. When the teacher said the exam had been changed and they would cancel everything and retake it, the inspector said there would be no retake. The exam was changed by the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. You're probably wondering why we were able to exchange papers when we were both detained at the police station, right? And before that, after the two superiors had signed, the civil servant discovered that the minister had written "Please let the teacher do it." And the inspector had written down the email login information of the smooth-talking teacher. So G logged into the email and downloaded the exam questions for the upcoming exam. In the evening, the civil servant used a laser pointer to disable the camera. Then, he used software to open the door to the exam paper storage room and used his personal skills to open the safe and exchange the exam papers. Now, the teacher also declared that he would stop the exam because the inspectors had interfered. The inspector then handcuffed the old man, threw the teacher outside, and said that no one was allowed to make noise or cause disturbances during the exam. As the old teacher was still opening the door, HOA Jine tripped him, causing him to fall. While he was apprehensive about Hanang's face, the TV screen broadcast a special program from the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. The inspector then suggested temporarily suspending the exam. Please watch the special video titled "Reasons Why the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection Changed the Exam Questions." In Mr. Tron's original test, the answer to the first multiple choice question was answer number 1, and student Dungshu's answer to question 1 was also number 1. In the original test, the answer to essay question number 1 was 3 cos theta b equals 4 cos cube theta minus 3 cos. What was Dung Shu Dong's answer? And the inspector had to look at the decoding board to understand these mathematical symbols. Then the two inspectors continued their analysis, noting that with the exam paper modified by the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection, Shu Dong's math score today was 0. However, if compared to Mr. Tron's original math exam, Shu Dong would get 100 points. In fact, the questions in the exam were completely the same, only the order of the questions was changed. How could a top student, always ranked 11th in the school, get 0 points? The fact that Shu Dong's answer was completely correct compared to Mr. Tron's original exam paper makes it hard to consider it a coincidence. When Shu Dong tried to dispose of a cheat sheet, the inspector rushed in, stopping her and shouting loudly to destroy the evidence. That's a criminal offense. Then the audio recording of the conversation between Teacher Tron and Shu Dong's mother played. The old teacher immediately unplugged the device, but the civil servant played the recording over the school's loudspeaker system. Everyone was very surprised when Teacher Tron revealed the answer to Shu Dong's mother, and there was a listening device that had been placed under the desk the day before. Now, the students kept asking questions to challenge the old teacher, and the female teachers were also shocked to see the true face of this respected teacher. Seeing the inspector, Hanang immediately remembered what happened the day before when the inspector gave Hanang a packet of rice balls and said, "You've grown up very well. Keep up the good work. As for trash like Chan Zhangzhou, I'll teach him a lesson." So now the male students smiled at the inspector. At the education committee meeting, the chairman of the Korean Communist Party was speaking and asserting that the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights was established out of personal revenge motives. They inserted it into Article 8 of the law establishing the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights. All on-site monitoring and investigation by inspectors are not bound by any agency or law. Even if the inspectors committed murder, they did not violate the law at all. Now, people may applaud their actions, but later, an irreversible tragedy will occur. Then the chairman summoned the prison guard who was present at the trial 2 years ago. And this prison guard also recounted that after the trial ended, while we were escorting the defendant to the car, a man drove his car towards the suspect. But Minister Choi stopped him, and Chairman Hoang also showed a picture of Inspector Hoa Jine for the guard to identify. Then the old chairman continued to say that this man had committed attempted murder. But the Minister of Education had appointed this man as an inspector. The Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights must definitely be dissolved. At this point, the minister was also looking at messages on his phone. When asked to respond, the minister stated that they had recently conducted a comprehensive investigation into the Bamboo Grove Foreign Language School. As a result, they found evidence that there was collusion between teacher Chan Sang-jon, parents, and Novus Academy to manipulate grades. John Chan Sang not only leaked the exam questions through Novus Academy, but he also directly leaked the exam questions during this midterm exam. I will announce the list of parents involved in manipulating the scores along with teacher Chan Sang-jia. The mother of little Shudong is also struggling at home because her name was mentioned. Then the minister continued to read out the wealthy individuals and couples of officials on the list who colluded to manipulate the scores. And the last one is incumbent Congressman Lee Chan Munday. When Congressman Lee threatened to sue me for defamation, the minister immediately told me to shut up. If you don't want to see your children's faces plastered all over television, aren't you ashamed? Why is it that whenever education is mentioned, you always blame others like this? Teachers, who should be the fairest, put pressure on a child from a disadvantaged background, deliberately pushing them to the limit in their future prospects. How can they still be called teachers? Do you think the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection only targets just students? Because of the criticism, we turned to punishing the teachers. Wrong. We are not siding with the teachers or the students, but with the victims. If this is also called personal revenge, then I will accept it. When the law fails, someone else must step forward. Even if it's revenge, it helps the victims breathe and continue to live. And Hanung's parents are also watching this live broadcast. When Minister Choi paused his speech, everyone fell silent, not daring to utter a word. As for Shu's mother, while preparing to pack up and flee, she heard the minister say not to think about escaping abroad because they were banned from leaving the country, so she collapsed to the ground. Then, as the 3 inspectors packed up and left the school, the boy ran out and bowed his head to thank the 3 teachers, and the female inspector told him to just be himself as before. Then the 3 inspectors also left the school. In the school, all pictures of the teacher were stripped away, and his books were also removed from the shelves. The lecturer at the academy was also arrested by the police. The lady and the old Congressman Lai had to go to the police station to cooperate with the investigation, and the rogue teacher was also made to wear a police uniform. When he was brought to meet the inspector, Hoa Jine said, "I want to show you how you have ruined a child's life." Then he sat down opposite Hanji and began to listen to the complaints and scolding of this ill-mannered little girl. Meanwhile, at a primary school, a teacher was looking back at her beloved classroom with a look of regret. Then this teacher went into a room and texted her mother saying, "I'm sorry, Mom, I really want to live but I think I have to die because I can't bear it anymore. You'll understand when you read my diary. Never forgive that person." Then she stood up on a chair, struggling with her thoughts, when suddenly Inspector Hanim touched her and said, "Teacher Choi John, I guess you haven't heard the announcement. Today, elementary school teachers have a psychological checkup, so please come into the room for the checkup." Then Ms. Duwei Sun took the phone and wiped away her tears. And she also walked out. After that, when the teachers were given the test forms, the inspector said that this was a psychological assessment for all elementary school teachers nationwide. Please answer honestly. And Ms. Duwei Sun also filled out the test form. Then the teachers left. After John walked away with a colleague, the inspector appeared and announced that, according to the psychological assessment results, John would be temporarily suspended from teaching starting tomorrow. When her colleague stepped forward and said that being a primary school teacher always comes with pressure, why should she quit teaching? Hazem immediately replied, "Isn't that better than dying?" According to the instructions of the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection, she would be temporarily suspended from work. And before that, Inspector Hoa Jine had seen this primary school teacher's diary because the mother had contacted the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection and said that her daughter had recorded these things in the diary. "I'm afraid something will happen to her. Please save my daughter." And in Duwei Sun's diary, there's also a question. "If I don't, will everything end?" At this point, when the inspector suggested that Ms. Jae Sun first seek psychological treatment, the civil servant said that her mother had already prepared her luggage. When Duwei Sun asked if her mother knew, Hazem said that her mother had gone to the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection. "The best thing for your mother is that she receives good treatment." When Ms. Duwei Sun asked about my students, the inspector said that another homeroom teacher would take over. "But you don't need to worry about that person being in the same situation as you, because that new teacher is extremely scary. And the person replacing Ms. Duwei Sun is Mr. Than Chna Hoa Jine." And the teacher also spoke up, asking the mischievous kids to sit down for a moment. But the situation was utterly helpless. When the teacher slammed his hand on the table, the atmosphere temporarily calmed down for about 2 seconds. Then everything went back to normal, and the students kept asking the teacher tricky questions and demanding that he take them to the restroom urgently. So the teacher had to carry the students in his arms and run. As soon as he finished one case, another arose immediately, so the student enjoyed the feeling of flying. Then there was a long line of students waiting to relieve themselves, so the teacher had to carry them all by himself. Only then could he accommodate the large number of people at mealtime, so the teacher also became a waiter to serve the mischievous kids. Then, when he was about to eat a pastry to stave off hunger, a little girl asked him to fold a frog for her, so the teacher raised his voice a bit, causing the little girl to sob because she felt hurt, so the teacher had to rush over and fold the frog for her. When the teacher finally finished making a frog that could jump smoothly, other frogs kept piling up, covering his face completely, so the teacher had to fold frogs until his hands ached. Meanwhile, the little rascals were running and jumping around non-stop. Then, after collapsing onto the sofa at home, Hoa Jin asked his late wife, "Is being a teacher so tiring?"
Gaz trembled.
Then the inspector began reviewing Du Wei Sun's diary to learn about her experiences. Previously, when preparing for her first class, Du Wei Sun practiced alone in front of the camera. The next day, Du Wei Sun had to teach in front of all the students and parents. Then Ms. Du Wei Sun asked the students to introduce themselves. While the others introduced themselves confidently, little Yuan stood up and remained silent, so the teacher asked, "Is your name Kim Yuan? It's okay, just sit down." A little later, after John saw the students and parents off, the mother spoke up, asking the teacher to take good care of Yuan, and if she had any questions or concerns, she could contact her. John replied, "Of course, you can text or call through the cloud-based app." But the brother asked again, "Do you live in a poetic apartment building?" This surprised John that the parents knew where he lived. Later, while John was cleaning the classroom, Yuan's mother texted him and said there was something that was making her a little worried. Just now when she told Yuan to sit down, she said in a very stiff voice, "I'm afraid the little boy will think that you don't like him, so I'm worried." And John also promised he would pay more attention. But the parent said, "I was afraid the boy's self-esteem would be hurt." So right after that, John had to write a note to remind himself to make sure Kim Yuan's self-esteem wasn't hurt. Then John also pasted it into his diary. The next day, Yuan was in tears because she didn't know how to solve the math problem, so Ms. John gently offered to explain it to her. But all the students in the class raised their hands to solve the problem, which made Yuan cry even louder. Immediately afterwards, the parent texted and said that Yuan's self-esteem had been hurt. Please don't make her go to the board to solve math problems anymore. The following night, the parents continued texting, asking them not to cross out Yuan's spelling mistakes because it would make the child lose confidence. When Jae-sun went to meet friends, the parents continued sending harassing messages. They told him not to use restrictive words like "don't do it" or "stop with my child." As soon as John left the cafe, the parent continued texting, "When there's a conflict with a classmate, always side with your child." The parent kept sending messages, instructing the teacher on how to treat their child. That day during physical education class, John saw all the students playing happily. Only Yuan stood still, not wanting to play with anyone. In the evening, when Jae-sun went to a gathering with friends and received a wedding invitation from a male friend, his parents sent a text message with a very sensitive suggestion: "Please wear a strapless bra, otherwise it will be harmful to the gender development of the baby boy." Jae-sun was extremely shocked when she read it, and every time her phone notified her of something, Jae-sun would panic. Then, when she looked at the photo she had taken with her friends the night before, she saw a comment from the parent below: "Why post such offensive things? Children can see that too. I'm afraid the children will become curious about sex." And Jae-sun also wondered how she knew his Instagram. Then the parents continued to harass him with comments. It seems she only cares about going out to have fun and not thinking about the students. Is she using our tax money to go out and have fun? Invest more in preparing your lessons. When Jae-sun informed the principal that his parents were invading his privacy, the principal suggested he change his social media account or quit altogether. When Jae-sun said he hadn't done anything wrong, the principal said she had reacted and even tried legal action before, but they claimed the principal only sided with the teachers, and a series of collective petitions were sent in. Ultimately, they caused chaos throughout the school. Immediately afterwards, John had to manually delete his Instagram account and write in his diary, "I'll only use social media again when I retire. I still have students to take care of." The next morning, John went to class and tried to lift his spirits. Then he single-handedly cleaned the classroom, wiping every nook and cranny spotless. Next came the task of rearranging the desks and chairs and decorating the classroom space. After a while, the tent with its sparkling lights was completed. Then, when Yuan came to class and looked at the tent, Ms. Du Wei Sun said, "This is the home in your heart. Here you can happily play with your friends. Yuan also said he wanted to play happily with his friends. So the teacher suggested he follow his heart. And the boy nodded. So soon after, Yuan confidently opened up and played happily with his friends in the heart-shaped house that the teacher had created. When it came to physical education class, Yuan was very energetic and scored a goal. But after a while, Yuan was accidentally pushed down by a classmate. When the classmate apologized, he pushed her down again. Ms. Duwei's son was about to speak up but remembered the parent's message. When there is a conflict with a classmate, always stand by my child. Then Yuan threw the ball at his friend's face, so the teacher had to come and retrieve the ball and help the other students stand up. Immediately afterwards, Jae-sun had to meet with the two parents to mediate, and the parent of the boy who was hit in the face also showed great understanding for the teacher. When Jae-sun said that the children had apologized to each other and made up, Yuan's mother asked if the teacher forced her son to apologize. I heard Yuan say that he was pushed first, so only the other boy should apologize. When the other parent said that my son Sejun was injured in the eye, almost blind, this parent said that my son Yuan was also injured. How badly injured was he that he had to come home crying? While the other parent spoke very softly, wanting to let things go, this parent shouted, "If my child suffers psychological trauma, who will take responsibility? I won't let your son get away with it." When Sejun's mother stood up, John immediately pleaded with her, and Sejun's mother also decided to retaliate. From the beginning, that Yuan guy wasn't sociable with his classmates. Now I understand why he was like that. The parent immediately stood up and demanded to hold a school bullying council, making Jae-sun extremely uncomfortable and forcing him to stand in the middle and take the brunt of it. When they sat down together, Dae-sun gently persuaded the parent not to request a school violence council meeting. But the parent said that it was because of her that the situation had escalated like this. Didn't I ask you to side with my child when there was a conflict? If we go to the council, what will you say as a witness? When Dae-sun said she would only say what she saw, the parent immediately confronted the teacher and demanded her phone number. Dae-sun said she wasn't allowed to give her personal phone number, but the parent said that after office hours, the cloud-based messaging app couldn't be used to contact her. You've caused my child to be in this state, and you still want to enjoy life after work? Then she yelled like a madwoman and continued to blame others. It's all your fault. My child's father is furious right now. I'll call him over now. When Jae-sun said the homeroom teacher couldn't help with that, the parent burst out laughing. The next day, as soon as Jae-sun entered school, he received a call from an unknown number. When he answered, he heard the voice of that nightmare parent. When Jae-sun asked how she knew his phone number, the parent asked what the teacher would say at the school violence committee meeting. Shortly after, the parent called again and asked why she answered so late. And Jae-sun was also extremely shocked to hear this haunting voice. As soon as she left the school, the parent called again. When she got home, Jae-sun broke the glass of water she was drinking because the parent called again. And we also didn't allow the teacher to sleep while calling in the middle of the night, so Dae-sun hung up the call. And every time he received a call from that parent, her haunting words would reappear in Dae-sun's head. And the parent continued to harass him right at bedtime, so Dae-sun could only hold his head in fear. Since he couldn't get through to her, the parent came and rang the doorbell of the house and asked, "Why aren't you answering my calls? Are you deliberately avoiding me?" When the mother came in, Dae-sun said he had to go out for a while. Then the parents angrily asked, "Why was my Yuan concluded to be the perpetrator? Why did we lose in the school violence council? Is it because you sided with the other side? Just because I said a few harsh words, you held a grudge and took it out on my child, right? You don't deserve to be a teacher. I'm not entrusting Yuan to you anymore. Please leave. My child's father is also very angry. You better watch out." After she left, Dae-sun burst into tears. The next day, a big, imposing man opened the classroom door, and Yuan called him Dad. The parent glanced at the teacher and called out, "Come here immediately." But the boy just sat still. When the parent rushed to his son's desk, Dae-sun tried to stop him, but the parent pushed him away and assumed a fighting stance. Then the parent lowered his hand and said, "You're really worthless." Then the parent took his son's hand and left, causing the students in the class to cry out of fear. The next day, the parent also received a complaint from the committee protecting the rights of teachers, and the victim was teacher Choi John. The parent immediately went to see Duwei's son and said, "If I am considered to have violated the rights of teachers, a written apology is all that's needed. I won't sit idly by. I have already reported you for child abuse. You have publicly humiliated and bullied my family. Just because of a few words I said, she manipulated some students to isolate them. She took a child into the storage room and called it the House of Hearts." Jae-sun immediately said that none of that was true. "I never committed any act of psychological abuse. I love Yuan very much. What you want is for me to quit teaching, right? I've already asked my lawyer, and even if I'm accused of child abuse, I won't be suspended immediately. But that parent told me to just go to class, and after school, go to the police station for investigation. It takes 6 months to a year to get a final verdict. If you're tired, then quit teaching. When Jae-sun asked what she would do if I were acquitted, the parent turned around and said, I'll just apologize according to the law. That's why Jae-sun was present at the police station to cooperate with the investigation and had to go to the police station many times to give her statement. Not long after, Jae-sun discovered that the parent had posted on a parent forum and accused the homeroom teacher of class 13 at Dung School of child abuse. Jae-sun also read the abusive comments directed at her, and the parents continued to harass her with phone calls everywhere, so the teacher had to turn off her phone. That day, when she took the students to the canteen, Jae-sun saw that her nightmare parent was in the group of parents surveying the meals, which made her feel very suffocated. After that, very few students came to class because after reading the article accusing Ms. Dewey-sun, many parents threatened that if Ms. Dewey-sun continued teaching, they would not send their children to school anymore. At this time, the inspector also looked at the heart-shaped house that Ms. Dewey-sun had meticulously designed. Then we looked at the drawings that the students had made about their dream professions, and Yuan also dreamed of becoming a teacher. After that, the inspector also told his colleagues about the situation of teacher Dewey-sun, who had no one to help her. When the inspector asked why the police were investigating this matter, Hoa Jin said there was a complaint, so the police were forced to investigate. The civil servant then said that any suspicion of child abuse could be filed. In the past few years, the number of teachers accused of child abuse was 11,626, but only 1.6% were prosecuted. Most teachers are harmed by these complaints, and the inspector also said that parents can file a complaint if they have any suspicion, so even if the final verdict is not guilty, the complainant will not be punished for defamation. Parents have taken advantage of this, filing complaints indiscriminately, and then the teachers gradually become exhausted and isolated. Although most were acquitted, they had to go through a lengthy investigation process. If accused of child abuse, teachers would have no shield to protect themselves. The minister then suggested that we become that shield. It's very difficult, but let's pursue it little by little. Jine, you should handle those parents who are using the law to bully others. And the inspector also put on his glasses to begin his work. Then the two inspectors escorted Ms. Dewey-sun to see the psychologist. In the classroom, Yuan was sadly looking at the sticker that Ms. Dewey-sun had put on him. Then the teacher blew a loud whistle to silence the children and asked who wanted to solve this math problem. While other students raised their hands, the teacher called Yuan to the board. Immediately afterwards, the teacher began writing comments and suggested that parents have their children do more math exercises at home. The parents also read these comments. When grading their son's work, they realized their son had made many mistakes. The next day, the angry parent came to class, but the teacher had already ambushed her, causing her to fall to the ground. After a while of chatting, the teacher pretended to say, "So you're Yuzin's mother. I'm Yuan's new homeroom teacher." When the parent asked if the teacher had made Yuan solve math problems yesterday, the teacher praised Yuan for being very intelligent. Perhaps Yuan is like Mother Moon? The parent laughed with amusement and then suggested, "Next time, please don't make Yuan solve problems again. If he can't do it, it will damage his self-esteem." The teacher immediately agreed, so the parent said, "Then I'm relieved, because the previous homeroom teacher was really strange, and the male teacher also promised I definitely wouldn't be like that." Then, when the parent got home, she received a call from the teacher asking for advice. Yuan fell asleep in class. What should I do? Should I wake her up? So the parent said I gave permission, so the teacher should go ahead and wake her up. Immediately afterwards, the teacher called again and asked what the best way to wake the child up was. When the parent said just shaking the child would be fine, the teacher said that physical contact could be considered child abuse. So the parent suggested just using words to wake the child. Then the teacher continued to call and asked if calling loudly would startle and hurt Yuan, which could be considered abuse. When the parent suggested asking the student sitting next to her to call for her, the teacher said, "What if Yuan feels embarrassed in front of her friend and her self-esteem is lowered?" The parent was speechless and didn't know what to say. Then she received another call from the teacher, so she had to hang up. Even after falling asleep, the teacher kept bothering her, asking what symbols would be better to use besides a slash when Yuan misspells. When the parent suggested using a star or a triangle, the teacher immediately objected, saying it was inappropriate. Then she suggested marking the rhombus and the trapezoid, but the teacher kept calling, so she suggested just crossing them out. Then the parent got furious because she was constantly being harassed. The next day, the parent stormed into the school looking sleep-deprived. As soon as she opened the door, the teacher said, "I was just about to call you." When greeting someone, should Yuan use their right or left hand? Because it also relates to the left and right sides of the brain. The parent immediately said that the teacher can decide that themselves. I'll call when I need to. Don't call me anymore. When the teacher asked if texting was okay, the parent shouted loudly and demanded that he stop contacting them. Be careful, teacher. My husband is very angry about what happened yesterday. Then we left. Immediately, the teacher went straight to the bank and asked the receptionist to call Yuan's father for me. Then he shouted loudly, Yuan's father. So the big guy came out. When the guy confirmed that he was indeed Yuan's father, the teacher immediately knelt down and apologized. I was really wrong. Please forgive me just this once. I've tried so hard to be a good teacher. I heard you were very angry because of my mistake. If you tell me where I went wrong, I won't let it happen again. When the parent suggested he stand up, the teacher grabbed his pants and asked, Is it because I crossed out and misspelled Yuan that you're so angry? Or is it because I said things like don't do this and that to stop you? You came to school before and tried to hit the homeroom teacher, didn't you? If you do that to me this time, I'll be fired. Please don't cut off my livelihood. When the teacher grabbed his leg, the parent pushed him away and many people filmed it. When the parent tried to explain to the boss, the parent pulled down his pants in the middle of the crowd. Noticing that the teacher was still deliberately pulling down his pants, the parent grabbed his collar and asked, Do you want to die? But the inspector twisted his arm and warned him to calm down and stay alive. If I hear you say my husband is angry again, you'll really die next time. Then Hoa Jine returned to his appearance as a gentle teacher. In the evening, Yuan saw her parents arguing, and her husband also told her that she was about to get a promotion. But the manager had seen what happened that morning, and the wife argued back fiercely. The next day, the parent stormed into the principal's office to complain about the teacher daring to cause a disturbance at the parent's workplace, but the principal strongly retorted that her intrusion was illegal. She advised using the app to contact the principal if she wanted to, and following the official procedures for filing a complaint. She also suggested that if that wasn't enough, the parent should petition the Blue House or file a complaint with the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection. Let me remind you of something you already know very well. Yuzin is your precious child, but the teachers are also someone else's precious children. The parent then loudly warned, You will regret this, just wait and see. Then she walked away, and before that, the inspector had met with the principal and promised that the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection would take responsibility for all consequences. So whenever something like this happens, please be there for the teachers as a senior, instead of as the principal. What the teachers need right now are seniors like the principal. A little later, the parent opened the classroom door and asked her son to stop studying there. After packing up her belongings, she immediately pulled her son's hand and left. Once outside the school, she called together the parents for a meeting. A short while later, when she arrived to meet the parents, the teacher was also present. Hoa Jine then handed the parent a file containing the complaint and said, I have reported you for child abuse. Yuan said he didn't like it, but she kept grabbing and pulling him like this. When he was changing into his gym clothes, he was covered in bruises. When the parent said there were no bruises on my son's body, the teacher said to let the police investigate. When the parent asked the teacher what right he had to accuse me, the teacher immediately brought up the law to argue. If a teacher suspects child abuse, they must immediately report it to the Child Protection Agency or the investigative agency. If the investigation results show no abuse, then I just need to apologize. That's what the law stipulates. A little later, the parent started discussing a post exposing Yuan's mother. This woman also bullied teacher Choi John, right? I heard she tormented her so much that the teacher's facial muscles became paralyzed. She's been an overzealous parent since kindergarten. With that kind of parenting, no wonder the boy is so different. Luckily, my son isn't in the same class as Yuan. The parent immediately asked, Who said that? I yelled like a crazy person. Was it that crazy girl Jae-sun who said it? The neighbors left to avoid this lunatic. Soon after, Jae-sun received another call from the parent, and I was driving to the house to track her down. When she saw Jae-sun, she turned her car around without even looking. Then the parent continued driving after Jae-sun. When she saw the teacher running into the school, she ran in after her, but the teacher stood right at the entrance and blocked the parent, so she immediately asked if they were conspiring together because of them. Yuan was isolated at school. I will report both of you to the Department of Education and the press, including the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. My nephew works at that bureau. I will make you give up teaching forever. The teacher then showed his nameplate and introduced himself. I am Inspector Hoa Jine from the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. I know very well how you treated teacher Choi John. That's why we are here. When the parent said that you people setting a trap for me was illegal, the inspector continued to bring up the law to talk. According to the final investigation results of the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection, she made malicious and fabricated accusations, violated teachers' rights, even obstructed public officials, and insulted their dignity. There are sufficient grounds for criminal prosecution. The parents then told me I did all this for my child. It's all the fault of that young teacher. How could she understand the feelings of parents when she hasn't given birth to a child? The inspector immediately asked, "So, do you understand the feelings of Ms. Choi Jan's parents? What would a mother's heart feel like seeing her daughter suffer?" The parents would say, "Let her live or die, it doesn't matter. My child is what's important. All parents in this world are like that." At this moment, Ms. Duwei's son was happily painting with Yuan in the heart-shaped house. The teacher also asked why Yuan was calling her using her mother's phone. So Yuan replied that the teacher had told her to follow what her heart told her. Her heart was very tired, so she wanted to see her. She apologized. "Because of your mother, you've suffered so much, haven't you?" And the parents are also listening from the outside and hearing their son say that his mother hates him, that she never smiles when she looks at him, and always makes an angry face. And Ms. Duwei's son also hugged the boy and comforted him, saying, "You've suffered so much lately." Then Ms. Duwei's son also suggested continuing to color. And the inspector also asked, according to her, who is truly thinking of the child? What kind of adult does she want Yuan to grow up to be? To become someone who does wrong but doesn't apologize? Or an adult who lives a lonely life without friends? Or someone who only cares about their own benefit and considers the lives of others worthless? Please stop. Yuan said that he likes the teacher, believe the boy and believe his teacher. And the parents were also bewildered watching Yuan playing happily with his teacher. Sometime later, at the trial, the prosecutor used two people to represent Party A and Party B. Person A has been regularly monitoring BS social media and leaving malicious comments, interfering in BS underwear choices, repeatedly sending threatening messages, and even going to BS house. This is considered stalking. It can result in imprisonment for up to 3 years or a fine of up to 30 million VND. Furthermore, Person A incited acquaintances to intentionally attack B. This is clearly a crime of intimidation. This crime can be punishable by up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to 5 million because this series of actions caused Party B to fall into depression and nervous breakdown, and even made extreme choices. Party A is the defendant, and Party B is teacher Choi Jan. Why are these human-to-human crimes allowed to happen in a relationship between teachers and parents? Immediately afterwards, Minister Choi stated that the media reports that malicious complaints are depriving teachers of the opportunity to become good educators. From now on, whenever there is an accusation of child abuse or a malicious complaint, the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection will send inspectors to the scene to clarify the truth. If defamation is confirmed, we will stand up with the teachers to fight so that genuine educators will no longer have to leave the classroom. We hope that parents will cooperate and understand. We will build a mechanism so that teachers can receive timely psychological treatment, including those who have ended their own lives due to violations of their teaching rights and those who are suffering greatly. On behalf of the Ministry of Education, I bow my head and offer my deepest apologies for the shortcomings of the education system that have left teachers unprotected and suffering alone. After that, the minister, the headmaster, also bowed his head sincerely. Ms. Duwei's son has returned to teaching at her old classroom, and Yuan and the students are very happy to be learning and having fun with Ms. Duwei's son. And previously at the trial, the male student can said that Ms. Gazoon is the only good adult he knows. Everyone else gave up on me, only she didn't abandon me. I fell in love with teacher Cho Gazoon. At this moment, while Hoa Jine was looking at a picture of Gazoon with the male student who confirmed the incident, she heard a knock on the door and it was Minister Choi bringing some kimchi for his son-in-law. And the minister also saw that Hoa Jine still displayed pictures of his daughter all over the house. When he saw the picture on the laptop, the minister said that when actions are mixed with emotions, that's when it becomes violence. Don't make me tell you to forget about my daughter. I haven't eaten yet. When the son-in-law asked if he could eat rice immediately, the minister asked, "Are you planning to give your father-in-law rice immediately?" "I want burnt rice, so cook some rice." So Hoa Jine immediately told her grandchild she would have to go out to buy rice. The next day, the news reported that the approval rating for the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection had exceeded 50%. Some believe they have hit the right spot for the public. But the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection still hasn't removed the MC, who is a group seeking personal revenge. Because the key characters were family members of the deceased female teacher, the civil servant immediately turned off the video for fear of upsetting the inspector. Then Inspector Hanim came out with a bowl of noodles and said, "I'm too lazy to cook noodles at home, so I just poured water in beforehand and it was perfect when I got home." Then the civil servant suddenly asked permission to go home, because I felt that whenever I was around those two, something always happened. Just as she finished speaking, all three saw the students trying to open the car doors. When Hazem suggested calling the police, the inspector said that since they were in uniform, it was their responsibility. So Hazem asked the civil servant to hold to me for her while she and the inspector got out of the car. The inspector also saw a female student being choked by a male student. When an old man walked into the restaurant without even closing his car door, these guys immediately got into the car and drove away, so the inspector asked them to stop. But they still stepped on the gas, sending the inspector flying onto the hood of the car. On this side. When Hanim introduced me as an inspector from the Education Rights Protection Bureau, the guy with the buzz cut immediately raised his middle finger to provoke me. Then the inspector was also thrown out of the car that Choi Choi and his gang were driving. And the male student continued to step on the gas, causing Hanim to fly to the side to avoid him. When the inspector and the civil servant got into the car, the guy with the buzz cut also forced the female student into the car as well, and the inspector decided to leave Handsome behind to catch up with those rowdy kids. They were constantly weaving through traffic in their car. Meanwhile, the civil servant was struggling to keep me balanced, whom Handsome had asked to help. And when they saw the inspector running alongside them, the rowdy kids lit the fireworks they had on their car and continuously fired them towards the car next to them. They even rudely shot at pedestrians. Feeling extremely angry, Hoa Jin overtook them to block their path. But the driver still managed to swerve the car around them. Just as they were getting incredibly excited, the driver crashed into a row of shops with many people sitting there. But the whole group burst into laughter and praised the driver and the female inspector who was still using her human engine to chase after them. After continuously provoking the inspector driving alongside, the group of hooligans were about to crash into people crossing the road, so Hazem immediately threw his bicycle to block the wheels of these unruly kids. When the inspector stopped the car, the civil servant still successfully protected to MI. Meanwhile, Hazem ran to open the car door and immediately confiscated the car keys. When the inspector asked, "Who are you guys?" the guy with the buzz cut said they were underage and not yet criminally responsible, only 14 years old. When the boys were being escorted to the station, the girl with them couldn't sit still. So Han Jim asked, "Are you okay?" The boys said it was because Jun Jin had been drinking. "Those guys are acting like we did something wrong. We are all friends." When the inspector asked if they were really friends, the female student Jun Jin immediately said, "Yes, we really are friends. Just leave us alone." When the police officer asked them to be quiet, saying, "Now you are the ones stealing the car and driving illegally," Daeng bowed his head in apology and said, "We saw the car already running, so we were just curious and climbed into it. We are just impulsive at our age. It's not like the law stipulates we are underage for no reason. We are truly sincere in our remorse." Seeing the hypocritical behavior of this group of young hooligans made the female inspector furious, so she stopped Hanzim and told them they knew they wouldn't be punished anyway. The police officer then said that this wasn't the first or second time these guys had been here. If they just say they don't know anything because they're underage, we are helpless. When Hoa Jin asked how this would be handled, the police officer said that if the matter was serious, it would be transferred to the juvenile court and protective measures would be applied. But at this level, we can only give a warning. I heard that the school also has no way to handle it. Now the teacher arrived, signed, and affixed his fingerprint to the handover confirmation form. So the male students nodded in greeting and confidently left. When the teacher greeted the inspectors from the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection, the police officer suggested that the two inspectors write additional statements because the students had accused them of child abuse through the app. Then the teacher apologized to the inspectors and said that they had actually wrecked the whole school because they knew very well that adults couldn't do anything to stop them. After that, Minister Choi appeared to vouch for them. When everyone went outside, they saw the untouchable group of troublemakers vandalizing Inspector Hohen's car. Then the ringleader smashed the fire extinguisher against the car window and made a provocative gesture before leaving. The minister then said, "How interesting. From tomorrow, you will all go to Hin Middle School to work." The next day, at Hin Middle School, while Jung and his gang were bullying a classmate, the inspector suddenly intervened and rescued the bullying boy. The inspector then presented the investigation report from the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection and asked the group of troublemakers to go to the counseling room. Once inside, Jung said, "This is just to buy time, right? Actually, they want to separate us. The teacher from yesterday is probably investigating the victim. Try whatever you want, teacher." Then he distributed the report to his accomplices. At this point, when Hanim asked if Jung's gang had bullied him, the male student said no, and the other students in the class also said they didn't know anything. A little while later, the civil servant came in and told Hanim that Jun Jin wasn't absent from school today, but she wasn't in her seat. Then, the two of them frantically looked through the photos Jung had uploaded to social media to find the hangout spot where those troublemakers usually gathered. When the civil servant showed a picture taken in a separate building next to the gym, Hanim noticed a locked locker behind it with a school uniform sticking out. They immediately rushed to the room and saw that the locker was still chained up. Hanim then cornered the civil servant, touched him, and pulled off his belt. Afterward, Hanim used the belt to break the lock and saw the female student, Jun Jin, sitting inside with several scratches on her body. After taking her to the infirmary, the inspector asked, "Did Jung lock you in there? Why were you with them yesterday? Why did you pretend to be drunk when you weren't?" When checking the student's bag, Hanim saw a bag of pills, and Jun Jin said they were dietary supplements, so the inspector offered to let her take one. But Jun Jin stopped her, saying she couldn't swallow them. When the inspector asked if it was because of these pills that she was injured yesterday, "That's how it happened, right?" Then the female student burst into tears and began to tell her story. Before, Jun Jin was a very cheerful student who always wanted her body to look perfect. When her friends told her that her dance moves were a bit slow lately, Jun Jin decided to go back on a diet to lose weight. During lunchtime, Jung walked into the classroom and asked Jun Jin why she wasn't eating lunch. The female student replied that she was on a diet, so he pulled out a packet of pills and said that someone had lost 20 kilograms by taking these. He said all the idols take these heart-shaped pills. Then he put the pills into a water bottle. After some hesitation, Jun Jin decided to drink the bottle of water. The next day, while Jun Jin was reviewing his dance video, Jung came running up to him and complimented him. "You look so much prettier lately. Is it because you lost weight? Do you want another pill?" Sometime later, Jun Jin proactively asked for the medicine, so Jung said he needed money to get it, about 30,000 won. The next time, Jung increased the price to 50,000 won. That day, when Jun Jin came to ask for medicine but said she didn't have any money, Jung suggested she work for him. Immediately afterwards, Jun Jin had to go with the girls to deliver medicine for Jung. After giving Jung the money from the drug sale, Jun Jin asked me if we could stop here. I was tired and scared, but Jung yelled at me, snatched the package of drugs back, and stomped on it. And Jun Jin couldn't escape this path of delusion either. After a while, sobbing uncontrollably in helplessness, Jun Jin saw the mailbox reporting to the school police. Immediately afterward, these male students were escorted into the police car amidst the cheers of the other students in the school. And Jun Jin thought that he would finally escape his current hellish situation. But the very next day, while Jun Jin was sitting in class, Jung was lurking outside. Then he brazenly walked into the classroom and pointed his finger at Jun Jin to provoke him. After that, he proceeded to punish Jun Jin for daring to report him to the police, confidently saying, "We'll just get a warning and be released. We are underage, so we won't go to jail." Then he dragged Jun Jin into the closet and locked it, saying that if you do something wrong, you have to accept the punishment. At this point, when the inspector asked if she could testify to what she had just said, Jun Jin said, "What's the difference between the Education Rights Protection Bureau and the police? The homeroom teacher, the school, or the police can't do anything. Every time this happens, Jung comes to find me and punishes me. This will only end when I'm the one in charge." Hazem immediately took the female student's hand and said that the protection of teaching rights would be different. "So trust us, we will protect you." On this side, when Dayoung respectfully presented the reports, the inspector noticed that they had written that his mother should be removed. Hazem then shouted loudly, rushed in, and tried to confront the inspector. They don't just beat or bully. They also deal in illegal drugs. They turn the girls into sex slaves and force them to deliver drugs to earn money. When the inspector asked if this was true, the guy with the buzz cut said, "So what? The laws for underage children allow us to experience many things. Isn't that what the country gave us to learn? I can't stop right now because I need the money. I'll stop as soon as I'm no longer underage. I promise." Then he laughed and challenged us to arrest us and throw us all in jail. "If you can do it, try it." Feeling bitter? It's truly humiliating. The very next day, one of the gang members was chased by a dog and fled for his life. He then ran into the inspector's car to take refuge. A short while later, 2 other hooligans chased after the official. When they rushed into the car to catch him, the car door was locked. And the female inspector was in charge of chasing after the ringleader, Jung. He had to climb over a building to escape, then ran into a boxing gym and hid behind a locker door. But this was Hansen's familiar gym, so Dayoung had to grab a whip to resist, but a female boxer landed a punch to knock him down. When Dayoung was thrown into the car with his accomplices, the inspector said he had determined the crimes they had committed, including school violence, disguised drug trafficking, forcing innocent children to deliver drugs, and violating their right to education. From this point on, he was sure of his fate, and the inspector drove away. A little while later, the car arrived at the prison. When they got out of the car, the inspector said, "Welcome to the only juvenile prison in South Korea. You said you weren't old enough to go to jail, right? But we can send you to jail." When the civil servant had completed the customs clearance procedures, HOA Jin immediately led the unruly youths into the prison. Now, when reading the report requesting cooperation, the prison director asked, "Is this really okay? If this gets out, He will be accused of abuse of power and human rights violations. But the minister told me he would take full responsibility. At least an adult should step forward to scold them and let them know they've done wrong. I really hope you can help me. At this time, the unruly kids are having their files processed to prepare them for entry into the camp and have to hand over all their belongings. Next, they have to remove their underwear for a full body scan. After that, they get a neat haircut to look like prisoners and have to hold a name tag with their crimes for a prisoner's photo. Finally, they were carrying the prisoner's belongings and standing face to face with the inspectors dressed in guard uniforms. When Hazem asked them to stand up straight, the officer also brandished his electric baton. The inspector then announced that from now on they would live exactly like the other prisoners here and receive the same compulsory education. According to the mandatory policy of the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection, you will have to do volunteer work. Any objections? If so, just put up with it. Now, follow me. As we passed the common area, the tattooed prisoners ran up to greet the newcomers to the prison, but Dayoung still defiantly raised his finger to provoke them. When they arrived at the cell, they saw a tiny toilet inside, so Dayoung threatened to report this everywhere. Can you bear the consequences? If you're afraid, let us out. Hajim then said there was a way. If you can beat me, I'll let you go. Hoan immediately dragged the civil servant outside and closed the door. When GE said, "It's 4 against 1 anyway, aren't you worried?" the inspector replied, "Of course I'm worried. I'm worried about those 4. At this point, surrounded by 4 prisoners, the female guard took a defensive stance, then handcuffed one of them and kicked Dayoung. Hazem then said, "When the prisoners use violence, I can legally beat them up." When they charged her, the inspector gave them a cushion to lessen the pain of the blows. Then Hazem continued to use a towel as a weapon and flicked one of them in the groin. After that, she used the towel to chain Dayoung's neck and threw him to the ground. When the inspector asked if anyone else felt resentful, all 4 of them were too exhausted to stand up. Immediately afterwards, the 4 were given the prison schedule, so they had to manually clean the floors with rags before starting physical exercise with the inspector. Next came studying, but they were incredibly lazy, so the civil servant called the inspector. Haim then ordered them to gather in the yard and instructed them all to shout in the sunlight to attract positive energy. Because of this, they studied more attentively. When they dozed off, the civil servant called the inspector again, so they had to go out to the yard to do physical exercises with her. Afterwards, they returned to copying notes while the civil servant timed them. After a while, when they couldn't solve the exercise, the inspector shouted again, demanding they go out to the field. After tiring themselves out with physical activity, they all went out to the field to pull weeds. After a while of hard work, the weeds were all pulled out, so they all switched to playing soccer in the sweltering heat. While lining up for lunch, the group was intimidated by prisoners wearing red numbered vests, so one of them told Jung that wearing a red badge meant he was a murderer or higher. The inspector then appeared and said, "Let's see if the rules for underage children still apply here." Then the inspector suggested stopping the distribution of food. From today onwards, underage children would eat first. The veteran prisoners were extremely upset with these young inmates, and the inspector also helped by scooping up a lot of sausages for the underage group. As a result, all the sausages were gone, causing great frustration among the red-carded prisoners, and the inspector asked them to be understanding. They're just underage kids. Then these unruly young prisoners get a good look at by the older guys to keep them in line. Afterwards, when they're too lazy to wash the dishes, the team leader Swam brings out more plates and shows them how to clean off the grease. Then Jung suggested finding a way to let our parents know we were here. While we were thinking of a way, the team leader Sugam brought out more rice and threw it into the water basin. So Jung stood up and loudly berated the older prisoner. After kicking the team leader into the water basin, Jung repeatedly punched the veteran prisoner, and the guard also appeared. When the inspector asked if Jung had beaten him, Sugam said no. He even asked if he was okay and help him. "Thank you. I will definitely repay this favor." Jung was extremely surprised to hear this. That evening, when the 4 of them returned to their cell, the inspector told Jung, "You didn't actually beat up the group leader earlier, did you? Absolutely do not touch that group leader. Do you know what kind of person Sugam is? He was a victim of school bullying. He eventually killed every single bully who harassed him." And one of them remembered hearing about that shocking case before. Just then, the team leader arrived and gave Di Ung a stern look. The next day, while everyone was busily washing dishes, the team leader brought the tray of rice as before. But Di Ung became suspicious when he saw the team leader's red card, and the team leader secretly took a spoon and hid it on his person. A little later, the guard searched the prisoner's cell because a spoon was missing. Since it could have been used as a weapon or for self-harm, a body search was necessary. When the guard searched the team leader, Dayoung immediately tattled. "I saw him put the spoon in his pocket," the guard said. So the guard searched Swam's body and also found something in his pants pocket, but it was just a toothpaste tube. So the guard immediately told Dayoung to be careful with his words. Then Dayoung saw the squad leader take the spoon he had hidden. He was chased by the squad leader. When cornered, the squad leader pointed a sharpened spoon at Dayoung's eyes and said, "I've already received the maximum sentence, so killing you won't make any difference. From now on, this place will be hell for you. Let's play hide and seek all day." After the squad leader was led away by the guard, Dayoung sat down and burst into tears. Then he wet his pants and his snot flowed like a stream. Outside, the parents of the 4 delinquent teenagers were protesting in front of the Ministry of Education building. When Minister Choi arrived in his car, the group of parents started shouting loudly, then climbed over the fence to run inside. When one parent asked if he had sent their children to a detention center, the minister replied that it was indeed a form of practical learning because they would end up there sooner or later anyway. The group of parents immediately started shouting and threatening to ruin the minister's reputation and expose the matter to the press and take it to Parliament. The minister then suggested they go to the children's school tomorrow because it would be their last chance to see them. Then the minister went inside. The next day, the prison van arrived at the school. In the gym, the minister was facing the parents. Then, the unruly teenagers, also wearing prison uniforms, entered and burst into tears, but the guards pushed them aside. The parents then scolded incessantly because their children were sent to prison and forced labor. The inspector then showed the bag of pills, and Dayoung said they were just weight loss pills. He said, "Some kids in my class asked me to buy them, so I bought them for them." The inspector then shoved all the pills into the mouth of the man who had just spoken, and he immediately vomited everything out. The inspector then said, "What's wrong with taking weight loss pills? They're just dietary supplements, don't make a fuss." "Dio, is it just a dietary supplement? I almost got screwed." The inspector immediately showed the real bag of medicine and said it was disguised. These kids have given it to their friends. When Dayoung said he didn't know anything, the mother immediately shouted loudly and said they were underage and didn't know what consequences this would lead to. That's why adults have to protect young children, right? The inspector then suggested that the civil servant show images of these underage children distributing and selling drugs to their friends. The money earned was over 50 million, and if these children are underage and not criminally responsible, they need to be protected. And who will protect the victims here? The parents immediately said, "Now we just need to teach them a lesson. Let's pull money to compensate the victims so they can write letters requesting leniency. We hope the teachers will consider it. They are still young and have a long future ahead of them." The minister then shouted, "Shut up. You should teach your children not to harm others and not to hurt them. If you can't do it, let the school do it for you. If the school still can't do it, then society must educate them. If no one can educate them, then the Department for the Protection of Pedagogical Rights must definitely teach them that if people do wrong, they must be punished. The perpetrators cannot stand above the victims. They must take responsibility for their mistakes." The parents immediately said the children were truly remorseful. And the young thugs also knelt down to beg Van for forgiveness. "Please give us a chance. We really can't go back there." The inspector then said, "We are not the ones who have the authority to forgive you." And Han Jim also led the female student Jun Jin inside. When faced with the 4 bullies kneeling on the ground, Han Jim said, "I will never forgive you. Because of you I haven't had a single day of peace. I can't even breathe properly. To me, school is hell." Dayoung immediately recalled a similar statement from the team leader in the prison, and Jun Jin also burst into tears, saying, "Why do you guys do wrong, and I'm the one who has to run away? I also want to go to school and graduate." Dayoung then said, "I'm underage, so it doesn't matter if I kill you." When he lunged forward, the female inspector immediately knocked him down with a single punch. The minister then concluded that the parents' request for the release of the children was officially rejected, and the inspector announced that the children would be returned to the juvenile detention center. Then, a tearful scene unfolded between parents and their children, and Jun Jin burst into tears, sobbing because she had escaped from that group of underage monsters. The female inspector hugged her to comfort her, and Jun Jin expressed her gratitude. Minister Choi announced to the media that the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights will directly educate underage children to be held criminally responsible. While we have been debating this for the past 70 years, the system for handling this group remains the same, despite the increasing number of such crimes and the harm inflicted on innocent students. The law has the concept of underage children being held criminally responsible, but in education, that concept does not exist. At this point, when the gang of delinquents returned to the prison, they were warmly welcomed by their seniors, and the gang leader was also waiting to greet them all back. When the inspector suggested they go inside, they cautiously stepped past gang leader Ho Bao one by one. A little while after being pushed into the cell, Jung imagined he was being shoved into a closet and the schoolgirl Jun Jine was standing in front of him. Then, when Jung asked how long we would be here, the inspector said until we were old enough. Anyway, after that, you'll be held accountable according to the law. But when the inspector closed the door, Jung felt as if Jun Jin had closed it, so he started crying and begging the female student to forgive him. Afterward, the inspector gave the prisoners soft drinks to thank them for their cooperation in disciplining the unruly group. Then, HOA Jine also gave the team leader a can of soda to thank him for his help, and Sugam said, "Please promise me one thing, don't let another person like me appear." I think the Education Protection Bureau can do that. At this point, a prisoner called out Dayoung's name and asked if he knew the BS gang leader in the East gang. When Dayoung said he hadn't told anyone, the prisoner said, "Our boss is very careful, goodbye." He then pulled out a knife, causing Jung to scream loudly. When the inspector arrived, he saw that the person receiving the knife was Gil Chan, who had attacked his fiancée. When the guard ran to intervene, Gun went up to the inspector, glanced at him, and was then taken away by the guard to have his wounds treated. Afterwards, the guard brought Gil Chan to see the inspector and told him that he needed continued monitoring because his wounds were quite deep. Jung, however, was unharmed. As the guard led him away, Gun ran up and knelt before the inspector, saying that teacher Choi Gazoon was the only good adult to him. He said he would live and reflect on what he had done to her until his death. He said he would not be able to live peacefully for even a moment. He apologized, but the inspector remained silent and walked away, ignoring Gun's continuous crying and apologies. But as soon as the inspector was out of sight, he immediately changed his attitude. A while later, while the members of the Education Rights Protection Bureau were meeting, they heard a commotion outside and an old man insisted on meeting the minister. When the minister came out, this old man immediately knelt down and begged the minister to just look at this once. "This is the report I investigated regarding the damages." He kept frantically and urgently pulling out other documents. After a while, this uncle was also invited into the room to talk, and he said that nobody would listen to me, and that my son wasn't innocent either. When the minister asked me how I could help him, he burst into tears and told me about his son. He said that when he was working in an office, he had been constantly receiving debt collection calls from his son. Later, the student, Lai Jejun, admitted he had been playing a game. When his parents asked how much he owed, Jejun stammered, "About 85 million. Then the boy took out his phone and showed his parents the ads for those games. Afterward, his father announced that they had paid off all his debts. All he needed to do was avoid repeating the mistake. Jejun nodded in agreement and was comforted by his mother. But that day, while studying, Jejun received a message notifying him of a 50,000 gold bonus for new members. After putting the phone down for a while, Jejun clicked on the link in the message and was led to advertisements for games, causing the boy's face to light up as he became engrossed in the games. Then his father smashed his son's phone and said, "You just paid off your debts a short time ago and you're gambling again." Sometime later, Jejun felt frustrated at only being able to use his old, basic phone. After a while, the boy took out his smartphone, which a friend had given him to use for web browsing. Jejun had promised himself he would only use one web browser, but gambling ads appeared at the bottom, so Jejun clicked on a game and became hooked. Immediately, the thug stormed into the company and attacked the father to demand payment of his son's debt, so the father had to submit his resignation to receive severance pay. Now the father says he has done everything he could. He took his son to the psychiatric department to get impulse control medication. He even went to a shaman to get a charm for his son. I also reported it to the police, but they said they couldn't shut down that gambling site. Even if they block the website, they'll just move to another domain. I don't understand why there are so many verification and approval processes. It took me 6 months to complete all these documents. Please see this message. My son has run away from home. I don't know how he'll live or die. Noticing that this uncle was very upset, the minister took his hand and said that he understood everything. The very next day, at Northwest High School, the teacher introduced a new transfer student named Bong Ji-e. After being greeted with applause from his classmates, the teacher asked Ji-e to sit in front of the boy named Pin. Pin still hasn't been able to contact Jae-sun. If there's any news, please let me know immediately. As soon as the teacher went outside, Ji saw all the students in the class constantly discussing how much money they had won in the game, and the civil servant had also recorded the entire gambling scene at the school through his glasses. And this online gambling is happening in every corner of the school. Then the civil servant told his colleagues that in the online gambling cases that have been busted recently, more than 50% were teenagers. Besides that, there are always loan sharks involved. There have been quite a few cases of people running away from home like Jae-sun. When Hanim said that we didn't have enough resources to catch them, the minister said he would ask the police, the prosecutor's office, and the Ministry of Information and Communications to cooperate. If they refuse, even if it means grabbing them by the neck, I will force them to participate. Then the minister went outside. Afterwards, in the classroom, The guy with the battery winked at the guy using crutches. Then they started chatting with the new student. Suddenly, the guy with the battery started shouting and announcing he just won 1 million world currency. So the guy with the anti-crime card announced that he'd treat everyone to a meal today. The male students raised their hands to choose what they wanted to eat, and GE also raised his hand and chose soy sauce noodles. When they arrived at the restaurant, GE stared blankly at the 4 male students glued to their phones playing gambling games. When GE asked if this was gambling, because he saw the guys winning money, the guy with the pin immediately said it was just a money-making game. Just register and you'll get a bonus. No need to spend any money. Just come here, register, and enter my ID into the referral code to get 50,000 gold bonus right away. Then he snatched the phone and registered G as a member. When he opened the game, G also pressed the button and immediately won. When he showed this video to his teammates, the civil servant said that this guy was the recruiter. There were also a few other accomplices. Initially, they said they would win a large sum of money to pique his curiosity. If anyone stops gambling, they will gradually become isolated and not be allowed to participate in the conversation. And the inspector also said they use the word game instead of gambling to reduce the victim's suspicion. But if you win, just win. Take the prize money you win. The civil servant's face brightened considerably upon hearing this, and he immediately took out his phone to play games. That evening, as he prepared to sleep, he kept thinking about the 2 dice in the game. And the inspector's comment about him keeping his bonus money made him decide to use his phone after 11 p.m. While playing the game of chance, GE kept winning, so his excitement reached its peak. This continued until 4 a.m., when the civil servant found himself losing repeatedly and had to keep playing to recoup his losses. By the time dawn broke, GE was in tears because all the money he had deposited had been lost. Afterward, he walked into class looking exhausted. When the guy with the battery asked if he won, GE immediately said he lost 1 million worlds, so the guy with the battery asked, "Aren't you going to win it back?" Then he started explaining how to never lose at gambling. Every time you lose, double your bet. If you lose 100 gold, bet 200 gold. If you lose 200 gold, bet 400 gold. Just one win is enough to break even. As long as you have money, this is an unbeatable method, impossible to lose. I have an older brother who can lend you money. Do you want to borrow it? Immediately after that, the guy with the battery called his brother to borrow 1 million for G. Then he suggested that G give him his parents' phone numbers as collateral. Just a formality. We won't lose, don't worry. After that, G only received 800,000,000, so the name of the battery immediately said, "My brother usually deducts 20% interest upfront. You idiot." Then the civil servant also analyzed for his teammate that the interest is 3% per day. For 1 million, the daily interest is 30,000. The next day, the interest is calculated as 3% of 1 million plus interest. After 1 month, 800,000 will become over 2.4 million. After 100 days, it will become over 19 million. And after 1 year, it will become over 48 billion. The inspector immediately comforted the young man and said, "You lost very well. They're probably about to put pressure on you." Just as she finished speaking, the inspector received a call from a debt collector asking, "Are you Bong Ji's mother?" When Hanim asked why I was Ji's mother, the inspector imitated a female voice and called me Ji's mother. So Hanim understood and confirmed that I am Ji's mother. The debt collector said that the woman's son owed 20 million W. He added 600,000 W in interest tomorrow. The mother declared, "I can't keep paying him off forever. I've given up on him. Do whatever you want with him, kill him or chop him up." But the debt collector called again, so Hanzim hung up. Inspector Than immediately said that these debt collectors were just small fry. "We have to catch the top brass first. Our company has already lost a lot of money, so the debt collectors will follow us. We will track them down to the highest level." The next day, the civil servant walked out of school and texted Hanzim to ask if he was following him closely. The female inspector was also sitting in the car outside. Suddenly, Hanzim smelled the aroma of spicy rice cakes and turned to look at the food, feeling incredibly tempted. Seeing the female students eating rice cakes, Hanzim couldn't resist any longer. Then a group of female students arrived, causing the rice cakes to dwindle. So Zim rushed out of the car and ordered a portion of spicy rice cakes and fried food. Just as Hazen was spearing a rice cake, a van arrived to pick up the civil servant. So when the inspector turned to look, GE was nowhere to be seen. Inside the van, the thug asked the students to unlock their phones and hand them over, and GE was about to delete the messages he'd sent to his teammates, but the thug snatched his phone. He then tried to fart. When he opened the window, GE threw the phone out and said, "My phone fell down the drain." The 2 thugs just cursed at him and then let it go. And the phone was also receiving a call from the inspector. When Hansen wondered where GE had disappeared to, the inspector suggested checking the data from the camera pointed at this location. Meanwhile, the thug demanded payment from the 2 female students, then handed them an iron bar and ordered them to steal money from the ice cream shop's cash register. So the two schoolgirls rushed into the ice cream shop and tried to break open the cash register and take all the tickets. Then they handed them over to the thug. A little later, the gang leader ordered GE to attack a drunk old man. When the civil servant resisted and said he couldn't do it, the gang leader got out of the car and tried to attack the old man, but Gond rushed over to stop him, so the two thugs dragged him back into the car and sped away. At this point, when reviewing the camera footage and seeing that GE had been kidnapped by the loan sharks, Handsome felt very grateful. Resentment. Minister Choi immediately said he would go to the traffic control center to ask for assistance in tracking the car. Meanwhile, Handsome blamed himself for letting GE get arrested because of those spicy rice cakes. The inspector kicked him in the leg and called Sergeant Im Handsome. Mistakes can be corrected, but giving up is the real failure. Let's act. Now that they've driven back to Zaunuyet, the thug suggests Gond close his eyes. Then the car drives inside. Once inside the hideout, the boss starts lecturing his subordinates and then goes upstairs. The remaining thugs suggested that his henchmen teach GE a lesson, so one of them led the civil servant into the area where the male students were working diligently and began instructing him. Send messages to all the phone numbers on this list, he said, then went outside and closed the iron gate. When GE read the message inviting her to play gambling games, he intended to text his teammates to inform them that he had been kidnapped. Suddenly, the guy named Jae Jun deleted the message and said that everyone here was being monitored. They were watching through the screen. The thug then rushed in and beat Jae Jun up for daring to talk during work hours. A while after the civil servant finished his assigned task of sending messages, he overheard two thugs talking and saying that the server in Cambodia was having problems due to excessive traffic. Seeing Jae-sun dozing off from exhaustion, one of the thugs intended to punish Jae-sun, but GE stopped him and said, "I can probably fix the server in Cambodia. To distribute the traffic, we just need to reverse the ProE settings and it will be resolved. Because I'm so obsessed with computers." The thug dragged GE upstairs and into the room to report to the boss about this guy with glasses. So right after that, Gond also sat down at the computer to fix the problem. The boss pulled out a knife and said, "If you can't do it, I'll gouge out your eyes." So the civil servant started writing code to operate it. After a while, the bullies threw bread and milk at the male students and locked the door. The civil servant got a full, nutritious meal because he had fixed the problem. Then Dizun also collapsed because he couldn't bear it anymore. The gang leader immediately went in to check and ordered his henchmen to drag this guy out, and GE also tried to watch where Jae-sun would be taken. The inspector reported to the director that the kidnapping van was a ghost car and had disappeared from the security cameras near where GE's phone was found. Then Handsome also dragged the male student with a battery, so he said he was only tasked with luring the kids to play games. He didn't know exactly where the company was located. The female inspector suggested opening their website. When the guy with the battery pointed to the advertising banner, the female inspector realized something, and the senior former Special Forces soldier also realized the problem, so the two proceeded to decode it. When the minister asked what it was, they both said there was a very distinctive flashing banner called Mo Code. The length of each flash on the banner corresponded to a character. After decoding, they got the words Bonga and my location is Mon Temple. A little later, the two inspectors stormed up to the temple but found nothing inside. When Hanem suggested it was just a coincidence, the inspector asked, what if he saw the shrine sign from another building? Both of them then looked towards the tallest building nearby and drove to it. Hanem then opened the gate, but the thugs were chatting away, ignoring the camera. Afterward, Hanem loudly called out Bong Ge and attacked the two guards. When one of the thugs was knocked inside, Hazem continued to describe Ge's appearance with various flattering words. Then the two of them worked together to get rid of these bullies. Hazem cornered one of them inside. When confronted by many other thugs, the female inspector tied up her hair to begin the job. Then Hazem also rushed forward to deal with each thug, and the male inspector helped to get rid of this mob. When all the thugs were taken down, the two high-fived each other, and Handsome loudly called out to Ge. Finally, the civil servant responded, so Handsome looked bewilderedly in Ge's direction and went over to check the civil servant's body. And Ge also said that their boss and these male students were upstairs. The inspector then suggested that Handsome take care of the children and the civil servant. Then the inspector ran upstairs and went into the room and asked the thugs, "Where is your boss?" When they attacked, Choi Jin fought alone, then snatched the knife and successively slashed at the three thugs. Then the music stopped. Noticing that the ashtray was still smoking, the inspector went over and discovered a hollow wall inside. Hoa Jin then removed the foam sheets and saw the back door. When the inspector stepped outside, he saw the gang leader climbing down the ladder to escape. Then he also put away the ladder to run away, so the inspector took a running start and jumped down below, managing to open the car door and kick the gang leader. When he tried to attack with a knife, Ho Jian's hand got caught in the door crack, causing him excruciating pain. Then the inspector threw him out and kicked him in the other arm. When he begged for his life, the inspector said, "If you win against me in a game, I'll spare you, and if you lose, you just get a slap." Then Ho Jian played rock paper scissors with the gang leader's injured hand. Since he couldn't choose anything other than paper, the inspector slapped him repeatedly. When the guy said, "No matter what I do, I'll always lose," the inspector replied, "That's exactly what you do to the kids. Your crimes are too numerous. Crimes that cause people to lose friends, crimes that cause people to lose families. For each crime listed, the inspector would deliver a slap. Then the gang leader would strain to bring out the hammer." Fan Tra immediately switched to throwing a punch, so Ho Jian continued to raise her arm and then bring it down for a decisive slap. Now, Ge also led Handsome into the room where the boy Jason was lying, and the boy was sobbing, begging, "Please save me." A while later, Jason was taken to the ambulance. When the thugs were escorted out, Ge stepped back because she was still afraid of them. When the inspector came to see the police, Hanim immediately confessed to the civil servant. But Ge was resentful. She said, "You always keep an eye on me. Do you know how scared I was?" And Hanim also promised, "From now on, I will never let you go again. I will protect you for life." When Ge asked why she had to protect him for life, Hanim corrected her, "So, only during working hours." And Gond also asked, "Earlier, when you were looking for me, I heard you say my eyes were a little small and had a cute, lively look, right? I've never heard anyone say my eyes are small before. Look closely at my eyes." Him looked embarrassed and quickly changed the subject, admitting that his eyes were very big. The next day, Jun's father brought gifts to Minister Choi and said, "Thanks to you, my son's health has improved, but I think I'm not worthy of being a father. Jun was kidnapped and I didn't even know about it. I'm really happy that Jun has returned, but I'm afraid he'll get involved in gambling again." The minister also suggested that he shouldn't give up in order to change the child. This time, the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection will help you. The father heard this and nodded in gratitude with tears in his eyes. At this moment, when Jason finished filling out the psychological counseling form, the impulsive classmate was also brought in. So the inspector asked him if he wanted to confess himself or if he should, and the impulsive classmate admitted, "I'm the one who sold you into the casino. I'm the one who got you into gambling. When you said you wouldn't gamble anymore and would switch to a 2G phone, I intentionally gave you the phone." Jun immediately asked why you did that to me. "We've been friends since elementary school." So the guy with the battery said I was just following orders. They threatened to contact my parents. Then the inspector asked us both to sit down and said, "You will both receive appropriate punishment. At school, you will be expelled or suspended, and in society, you will be punished according to the law. If you're lucky, you'll only have to do community service. Otherwise, you'll go to jail." When the thug pleaded his innocence, saying he was just a victim and had been tricked by adults, the inspector said, "Then what about the parents who lost all their life savings, even sold their house and had to quit their jobs because of their son's gambling? What about the father who was humiliated by some random gangster in front of everyone because of his son? What about the mother who had to scrub greasy grilled meat in place of the father who was supposed to be watching the child? That father was considered a scoundrel, yet he went from the police station to the Education Rights Protection Office, crying and pleading, begging someone to save his child. But what about that father? Those people are the real victims. You had countless opportunities to stop, but you threw those opportunities away yourselves. Do you want to quit gambling and be forgiven by those around you? Then from now on, keep repenting and keep begging for forgiveness. This is your last chance." Immediately afterward, the two male students diligently scrubbed the barbecue grills under the supervision of Inspector Ho Jian. Then the inspector took out the list of the amounts that the two male students had reported to their parents and said that the remaining amount they had to pay their parents was over 98 million. They caused the problem themselves, so they have to clean it up themselves. Every time I send this number to their pagers, they have to come see me immediately. Dung Bin then asked them to return their phones. Who in high school uses these things anymore? The inspector said freedom only comes with responsibility. And most importantly, I don't believe the gambler's words, and Ho Jian also left. The female inspector then herded the civil servant into the phone store to demand compensation for GES broken phone screen. And Hanim also said, "I feel so guilty. I promised to protect you but couldn't, so you can choose one." When GE was looking at a phone, disguised gambling advertisements appeared, making his face light up. The inspector then took GE's hand and suggested that the boss get a basic mobile phone and call the inspector to report that they had discovered another gambling addict. At this time, Chairman Hoang was going into a market to campaign and get a public image, but then he saw the news that Minister Choi Gang's approval rating had surpassed 50% for the first time. He was currently leading the opposition leader, Hoang Git, by 17%. Afterward, when he went into a restaurant, he saw Minister Choi eating inside, so Chairman Hoang instructed his subordinates to wait outside. When the minister asked why he was campaigning without registering his candidacy, the chairman replied that a rumor was circulating. People were saying he intended to use his daughter's influence to become president, and Minister Choi countered. He also mentioned that the future members of the Korean National Party were holding an emergency meeting today. He wondered what they were discussing without telling him. Perhaps because his approval ratings have been declining lately, they're planning to replace the presidential candidate? Then, Chairman Hoang immediately called and asked why he wasn't allowed to attend the meeting of the future Korean Party. While he was still annoyed, his secretary announced that a visitor had arrived. They said they had something to discuss regarding the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection, and it was the name of the prison guard at the jail, and this guard also gave the old congressman a USB drive. Shortly after, the chairman arrived at the jail to meet the prisoner for Giltron. A little while later, when the chairman asked, "Do you know who I am?" Gun replied, "I've seen you on TV." Then the chairman promised to use his political power to help Giltron. "Let me see your hand again. The injury doesn't seem minor, so try going to an outside hospital for a checkup." The next day, the news reported that the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection had conducted urine tests in schools nationwide to detect and treat early kidney abnormalities and diabetes in students. However, some questioned whether this was a screening test for the rampant cheating in schools. Some school principals used the excuse of being in the middle of final exams to refuse testing, and the civil servant also mentioned a school that refused testing, Zangdong High School, a very famous high school in Gangnam. It also has the highest number of students admitted to the National Se University Medical School in the country. My mother wanted me to go to this school, so my family moved near it when I was 7 years old. The parents at Zhang Sun School are known for being very strict. In Class S of Zhang Sun School, the students are preparing for their final exams for direct admission to university. Among them is a male student trembling all over with red eyes. Then, 3 inspectors also entered the school. When they arrived at Class S, the civil servant immediately said that this was a class specifically for students who wanted to prepare for the medical school entrance exam and was one of the top classes in the entire school. Inside, the male student, who was older than Minute, started to figure out the answers to the exam and quickly filled in the answers. Then he also saw the scene of the mother holding a bouquet of flowers and congratulating her son on being accepted into the medical school of Sion National University. Then the teachers and friends all applauded in unison, and then lifted Han Minute up to celebrate this admirable achievement. When Han Minute landed, he collapsed onto the desk, so the inspectors came in to check on him and saw that the male student had a nosebleed, so Hoa Jine used a handkerchief to stop the bleeding. Then the 2 subordinates started to take Han Minute to the infirmary. Meanwhile, the inspector noticed that the other students were still diligently working on their exams, paid no attention to what had just happened. Then, as soon as the male student was laid down on the bed, the mother appeared in the classroom and called, demanding that the exam be stopped immediately because her son couldn't take it. She asked if they would take responsibility if her son didn't get into medical school. Then the mother ran into the infirmary and asked her son how far he had gotten on the exam. But Han Minute just shook his head, so his mother suggested he continue with his homework. But Han Minute said he felt strange. He had very odd thoughts. His mother said it was just because he was distracted. She had brought medicine with her. Then she put a heart-shaped pill into her son's mouth and said, "You're almost there. You can't let all your hard work go to waste. For Mom's sake, please try a little harder." Then Ho Minute returned to class to continue taking the exam. A little while later, the television in the classroom started showing a special directive from the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. All students were instructed to temporarily stop leaving and quickly prepare for urine testing. Hanim immediately called her mother to inform her about the test, and the other mothers also received the news and immediately jumped up in protest because they didn't want their children to be tested. When the students from Class S left, Hanim suggested that everyone should be tested. But the female student Da Hui said they had to go to extra classes. Their mothers were coming, so they should talk to them first. And the parents also arrived en masse and simultaneously demanded that their children leave. When the inspector asked what the women were doing, Da Hui's mother said, "Do you know this is a very important period for the children? 4 top students, just 1 point can change their university ranking by several positions. These children are applying to the medical school at National College of Medicine. Why do we need a my thigh test? From the moment they were born until this crucial moment, our children haven't wasted a single second or minute. While the mothers here sleep an hour less than their children, send them to extra classes, and run around seeking advice. If you want a test, do it after the university entrance exam." The inspector then said, "We are testing to prevent anyone from dying. We want to save even just 1 student before it's too late. Tomorrow, before going to school, please take your children to the designated hospital for testing. If you don't go, Something will happen that you won't be able to handle. When the parents had all left, the inspector called Hunmin's mother over and said, I saw Hunmin's condition earlier and it seemed very bad, so you must bring her for testing tomorrow. But the mother just walked away. The next day, the news reported on a case where a prisoner had taken a knife blowment for another teenager in the prison. This prisoner who was stabbed was the same one who murdered teacher Choi 2 years earlier. Noticing his two subordinates constantly covering the screen, the inspector said, the more you do that, the more I'll pay attention. I've seen everything already. A little later, all the students in Class S submitted their urine samples. Min's mother then took her son outside to get some fresh air and water. Then she received a message notifying her son that the end-of-semester exam results were out, so she urged him to check his email. When Han Minute opened the report card, his mother snatched the phone and noticed that he only got a B in one subject. Han Minute said that was the subject where he suddenly fainted, and he apologized. Mom. His mother pursed her lips and said, What did Mom say? Those of you with weak spirits like you should take your medicine properly. Is it really that hard to take just one pill? Don't you see how pitiful Mom is? Because of you, Mom has to beg and plead with other mothers. All Mom asks is for you to study. Do you know how hard your mother has worked? Hearing this, Han Minute stepped outside and felt a sharp pain in her chest. Ever since Han Minute was in 6th grade, her mother had been seeking help from a tutoring consultant. This consultant was very famous for helping with medical school entrance exam preparation. When the consultant asked how far Han Minute had progressed in her studies, Han Min's mother said that Han Minute, despite being only in 6th grade, was already doing 10th grade math. But the counselor asked, You haven't finished high school math yet. Minute being first in a provincial school is only equivalent to a lower rank in Gangnam. Don't even dream about medical school. Do you know when mothers in Gangnam start preparing their children? From the moment they're born. They've already made a 20-year plan. From the moment she was born until choosing a kindergarten and extra classes with a tutor. At Min's age now, she should have already mastered the core concepts of the university entrance exam and been practicing exam questions continuously to avoid mistakes in the actual exam, while also preparing essays in English. Do you understand how slow Han Minute is? This is the level of difficulty students in Gangnam are solving. How many questions do you think Han Minute can answer correctly? Immediately, Han Min's mother went to the real estate office to look for an apartment to rent in Gangnam. When her husband asked if they absolutely had to live there, she said it was the house where both of their sons got into national universities. Zhangdong High School has a medical school entrance exam preparation class for only the top 10 students. If you get into that class, you'll definitely get into the medical school at Sion National University. Don't you feel resentful? Your younger brother has already graduated from medical school. Does your family treat you and your brother the same way? When the husband says that it's thanks to his brother that he got a job at his brother's hospital, the wife says that the whole family is being looked down upon. I will definitely get Han Minute into medical school so she won't be looked down upon anymore, so hurry up and take the door off. Then both husband and wife carried the bedroom door out. That's why the mother was able to observe Han Minute very clearly whenever she studied. After achieving her goal of getting into Songshan High School, the mother changed her goal to getting into the medical school at Sion National University. She continued to monitor her son's studies, bringing him fruit and saying, I'm not the only one overreacting. All the mothers in this area are like that. When Minute said it seemed like all the other students were studying with the same tutor, the mother immediately took out her phone and texted another parent, asking her to let her join the mother's group chat. When Min's mother offered her a drink, this parent said that all she needed to do was win over Hui's mother, because she was the leader of the group of mothers. For the mothers here, information was power. Hui's mother practically controlled everything, from coordinating tutors to advising on tutoring and even the academy specializing in preparing students for medical school entrance exams. If either parent works for a company, they won't be in that group. But if they're doctors or university professors, they're always welcome because they need to prepare their academic records for early admission. Things like volunteer activities at the hospital or participating in university experiments are always welcome for the children of doctors or professors. But if Hui's mother vouched for them, all those things will be done. When Min's mother heard this, she realized she needed to win over Hui's mother. That night, seeing her son dozing off, she slammed the tray of food down on the table and said it wasn't bedtime yet. Eat and study at the same time, she told him. When Minute asked for more rice, she said that if he was too full, he would be sleepy. Just having leuco and brains is enough. Eat this much and then concentrate a little more. Then, when she received a call from her husband, the wife immediately suggested that he move to a cheaper apartment or move back to her mother's house to save money. It's all for our Han Minute. As long as Han Minute succeeds, everything will be rewarded. When Han Minute heard this, she put down her chopsticks and continued studying. The next day, her mother brought a gift to Hui's mother. But she just put the gift aside and said, Mothers come to me for only one reason, so you don't need to say anything. Just come and attend some of the mothers' group meetings. At the mothers' group meeting, Hunmin's mother transformed into a waitress, running up and down the stairs to serve drinks to the parents. When Daehui's mother shared information about good tutors, other mothers eagerly took notes. That's why Hunmin's mother was able to hire a good tutor for her son. However, his grades in various subjects couldn't reach the top of the school. She also told her son that a child's academic achievements depend on their parents, but the mother still seemed very upset. Immediately afterwards, Hmin's mother brought even more gifts to Daehui's mother and said, "Tutor, I also invited the same teacher you recommended. We study at the same place as Daehui, so I don't know why she couldn't get into class S anymore." Daehui's mother then said that even though they study together, their learning abilities are different. That's the difference in concentration. Then she went to get a bottle of medicine and suggested that Hunmin try this. Her concentration would improve significantly. Daehui's brothers also got higher scores thanks to this medicine. In the evening, the mother gave Hunmin a bottle of medicine and told him that it would help him improve his concentration and reduce stress during exams. The boy then took the yellow pill. At this point, the inspector announced that it was an illegal drug. It was a medication for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, that was not licensed in the country, but the mothers had been spreading the word that it was very effective. The urine test results of the children revealed 2 dangerous substances that are only prescribed to high-risk patients and are considered psychotropic drugs. Using these drugs without a doctor's prescription is illegal. According to the law on the management of narcotics, this is subject to criminal penalties. Everyone here will be investigated by the police. Then the doctor presented the very serious test results for Hunmin. But Hunmin's mother was not present. Daehui's mother then recalled what happened the day before. At that time, Hunmin's mother had said that Hunmin's grades had improved since taking the medicine she gave her, but Hmin still hadn't gotten into Class S, so she asked if there was any medicine more effective than that one. But Do's mother said that medicine was enough. So Hmin's mother posted on the forum, "My child's performance improved after taking medication for ADHD. I'm looking for something more effective, so please help me." And parents also crowded around asking what kind of medicine could help boost grades so well. Then there was a comment saying that I have the medicine that the top student in medical school last year used. Immediately, the mother drove to the meeting point. Then someone patted her on the shoulder and handed her the mysterious medicine. Since then, Hunmin has regularly taken the heart-shaped pill. Immediately, Hunmin ranked first in all subjects and improved his overall school ranking. So his mother hugged him tightly and asked, "Now you've got into the medical school entrance exam preparation class, right?" Hunmin replied, "Tomorrow I'll be transferred to Class S." His mother was overjoyed to hear this. At this point, when the civil servant couldn't get through to Hmin's mother, the inspector said that Hmin's test results had revealed another drug similar to the one used in the drug test. The situation was almost fatal. When the civil servant said that continuing to use it would be life-threatening, the inspector replied, "Are you crawling on the road?" So the inspector stepped on the gas. At home, the mother told Hunmin that if early admission didn't work out, there was still the university entrance exam. As long as she did well on the university entrance exam, she could still get into medical school. And from now until then, she should just stay home and focus on studying. Suddenly, Hunmin asked for more medicine, so the mother excitedly went to get it. Just as she was taking out the heart-shaped pills, the doorbell rang outside. Looking through the peephole, the mother saw the inspector standing outside and immediately told her son to be quiet. The inspector also called to say they wouldn't open the door, so Hazem hooked a rope to an iron ring on the rooftop and started swinging it down across Hunmin's apartment. Then the female inspector also jumped down and swung on the rope like Spider-Man. Upon seeing Ms. Than Tra, the mother immediately put the medicine in a box, and Han also tried to snatch the bottle of medicine. Feeling the situation was too critical, Han Jim kicked the glass door to enter the house, then kicked the bottle of medicine out of Hanmin's hand, and then opened the door for his 2 colleagues. The 2 inspectors then restrained Han to prevent him from taking the medicine and took him to the hospital. The inspector immediately stopped the mother and asked if she knew what kind of medicine it was. She said, "To you, it's medicine to get into medical school. But we call it a killer drug because it contains aphrodisiacs." When the mother repeatedly insisted she didn't know it was a banned drug, Hoa Jin asked, "Are you really unaware? Didn't you notice the changes in Hunmin after she took this medicine?" And before that, the mother had seen Hunmin constantly breaking things all over her body and having a lot of nosebleeds. Even Hunmin wrote in his notebook that he wanted to die, but she tried to ignore it. Now, when she told me to only give the boy the medicine until he finishes his university exams, the inspector said that something might happen to Hunmin before the exams. Is your son's life not as important as medical school? But the mother said the boy was about to succeed. This is a very important moment, so I have to let Hun Minute continue his studies. Hoa Jine then declared that she would not be allowed to leave the house from this moment on. To save Hun Minute, the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection will separate the child abuser and the victim. But the mother cried and asked if they would take responsibility if he missed the opportunity to go to medical school. The inspector immediately grabbed her collar and said, "If you want to go to medical school so much, then go in by yourself." At the hospital, the civil servant saw Hun Minute trembling uncontrollably. When the boy ran to the glass, Da-hun immediately used her hand to shield Hun Min's head. Then the hospital staff also helped to restrain the male student. When H Minute was asleep, Hanim asked Ge why he put his hand in the glass when he was so bad at enduring pain. Ge replied that it was better for his hand to be injured than for H Minute to be injured in the head. "Every time I look at H Minute, I remember myself when I was little because my mother also wanted me to go to medical school, but I didn't find it fun at all." At home, Inspector Than threw a university entrance exam booklet to Hun Min's mother so she could study for the medical school entrance exam. She then asked him, "Do you know why I let Hun Minute go to medical school? I have no assets to leave him, nor any connections or support. When faced with harsh competition in society, children will gradually resent their parents." Hoa Jine then said, "Then you should study on your own to get into medical school, and then be a solid support for Hun Minute. Hun Minute can be the second generation of the family." The mother said, "What's the point of studying at this age?" The inspector then showed the schedule and meal plan that the mother had created for Hun Minute and said, "If you follow that, you'll definitely get into medical school. You should study on your own. When the mock exam results meet the admission standards for medical school, I'll let you meet Minute." Then the inspector sat down to supervise the parent practicing English, provided some almonds for dinner, and said that a full stomach would make her sleepy. This was prepared according to her menu. The mother was only allowed to go to sleep at 1 a.m., but before anything else, the inspector turned on the light because he had to wake up at 4 a.m. while the mother was still sleeping. Then Hoa Jine immediately tore up the mattress and threw it out of the room, saying, "There's only one way for you to leave here, pass the medical school entrance exam." At the hospital, when Hun Minute woke up, she immediately apologized to the civil servant for injuring his hand. Then the young man asked if he could get him that medicine, but the civil servant immediately said no, it was some kind of drug. When he begged to take just one pill, he firmly said no. Everyone promised that it would only be once more, and if it continued like this, he would be ruined, his body, his mind, and his whole life. If he didn't want to die, he should try to endure it to the end. At home, when grading the mother's exam results, the inspector immediately declared it a failed grade. In the next grading, the result was still a failed grade. In the third grading, the score increased slightly but was still a failed grade. At the hospital, the two inspectors saw Hun Minute constantly scratching all over his body, while his mother, exhausted from studying, began to understand her son's suffering and confinement. Hun Minute told the inspectors that he wanted to die because he thought that if he didn't get into medical school, this hell would never end. Every time he wanted to die, he would take medicine. That day, he texted his mother asking for an extra day off from school, but she firmly refused, so he sat crying by the river and then jumped into the river. Then I came home soaking wet, but my mother asked why I wasn't at extra classes. She got annoyed and went into her room. When I took the yellow medicine she found for me, I no longer thought about wanting to die. But after a while, I still wanted to die, so I asked my mother to find a stronger medicine. I only took that medicine because I wanted to live. The civil servant then said that I could still live without that medicine. He told me to quit the medicine and quit everything that makes me want to die. If it's studying, quit studying. If it's my mother, quit my mother too. When Hun Minute laughed and asked, "How can I quit my mother?" Ji replied, "You're exaggerating a bit." He apologized at home when a mother was trying to sneak out and was about to enter the door password. Then the inspector said it was my birthday. "Do you know what day it is?" When the mother said I was too tired to study anymore, Hoa Jine said she wouldn't let Minute give up. The mother then cried and complained, "I sold my decent house to move to this dilapidated one. I have to do odd jobs for other mothers to get some information. I live without any hobbies because I have to pay for my child's extra tutoring. It's all for the sake of Hun Min's success. I'm making sacrifices." But the inspector said it wasn't me who sacrificed for Hun Minute, but rather Hun Minute who sacrificed for me. And when Hun Minute was little and drew her dream of becoming a doctor, her mother was very happy. When she grew up a little and had to write down her dream, her mother suggested that Hun Minute write down doctor so she could cure her mother's illness. The mother kept praising Hun Minute for being very filial and obedient. Then came the reproaches. "Don't you see how pitiful your parents are? We are sacrificing everything for you." When Hun Minute finally dozed off, her mother yelled, "I endure everything for you. If it weren't for you, Mom would have been happy. Mom is sacrificing for you." At this point, H Minute spoke up and asked the civil servant, "I heard you're very smart, right? Can you tell me where I should start in this situation? He immediately suggested she think about what she liked most. He said he was happiest when doing what he absolutely loved. And H said she could list hundreds of things her mother liked. But she didn't know what she liked. And GE also said, let's try to find it together. Then he led all three of them to the pediatric ward of the hospital and gave Han Minute and the inspector each a fairy tale book. While GE read the story, the hamster became a YouTuber, and Han Minute read the story of the firefighter cat, and the boy also laughed with delight. The inspector couldn't take her eyes off the story and burst into tears while reading the children's story. At home, after the mother had experienced enough hardships of studying, the inspector announced that we would be going out. Then, after running to hug her son, the mother asked, "What about your studies? Are you still studying? I'm a little worried because the university entrance exam is coming up. You understand my feelings, right?" Seeing the clean answer key, her smile faded. Minute then signaled for the inspector to leave. The young man then told his mother, "I won't be going to medical school and I won't be taking the university entrance exam this year. I will continue studying and retake the exam next year. I don't want to live like this forever, without purpose and doing whatever people tell me to do. Even if I don't get into medical school, I'm still your son, Mom. Please support my decision." But the mother still insisted that her son take the university entrance exam and get into medical school. So Han Minute pushed her mother's hand away and said, "Now I have to go for treatment, and Mom, please don't suffer because of me anymore. I hope you can live your own life." Then the young man hugged his mother and walked out of the hospital room, and the mother could only sit down in silence. Minister Choi announced to the media that a drug used to treat attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, was detected during nationwide testing of students. In some cases, a drug that parents and students call a study-enhancing drug was also found, with ingredients similar to those found in my thigh. From now on, the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection will conduct pre-college entrance exam checks. Students found using illegal drugs will be disqualified from the college entrance exam. At this point, a police officer showed HOA Jine the different shapes of plum blossoms. There were round and heart-shaped ones. The bow-shaped ones were popular 2 years ago. HOA Jine then discovered an important detail. Afterward, HOA Jine realized that his fiancée had drawn the shape of a pill in her notebook with the words below, "Can I forgive CH Gun?" An accomplice visited Gillen and said, "Because of that Education Rights Protection Bureau, all our business is blocked." H Minute then said, "All we need is for that bureau to disappear." And earlier, when Chairman Hoang asked if he were granted amnesty and allowed to return to society, what he would most like to do, and Gil Chan said that if that happened, he would want to go back to school. So at this point, Gun was also put into a prison vehicle to prepare for reintegration into the community. The next day, protesters gathered in front of the school and chanted, "Drive out the murderer. What crime did our child commit that he has to study with a murderer?" And Gun also entered the school surrounded by reporters and protesters. And before that, the Judicial Council had reviewed and determined that Chogul Chan did not pose a risk of recidivism, so they approved his pardon. When watching this live video, the minister immediately put his phone down. Hazem immediately said that the boy would be considered for pardon and released as soon as the minimum prison sentence was over, and then approved by the Education Rights Committee for immediate readmission. Everything seemed prearranged, which I found very strange. And the minister also said that our protection of pedagogical rights has no right to prevent students from having the opportunity to re-enroll. If we did, that would be revenge. Where did Inspector NAHOA Jine go? At the same time, when Gil Chan entered the school, he saw the inspector waiting. So the male student nodded in greeting and felt as if teacher Choi Gazoon was standing in front of him. Then HOA Jine said, "Today I'm here as an inspector from the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection to see if students like you can adapt to school life and if you have the potential for reform. It's best if you just quietly breathe and live like a student." Then the inspector left. Looking down at the floor, Gun remembered that Gazoon had collapsed right here 2 years ago. A while after being introduced to the class by the teacher, Gun said he wouldn't disrupt the students' studies and hoped for their help. Later, during the break, Kaiho started reenacting the stabbing of the teacher 2 years ago and asked Gun, "I heard you killed a teacher? Look at his eyes, guys. Are you planning to kill me too?" When Gil Chan took out his book, the gang leader knocked it to the ground and said, "How about I call you brother?" But Gil Chan said to just call me whatever felt comfortable, and the gang leader also suggested that I should live with my head down. Otherwise, I'd get into trouble with the Education Rights Protection Bureau. And Gil Chan said I would do that, so Kaiho suggested that his subordinates go outside for a cigarette and call the chubby guy Zung Gu to come along. A little while later, Gun unlocked an iron door and entered a classroom that had a no entry sign posted on it. He also retrieved a bag of pills shaped like a bow. Looking out the window, he saw the chubby boy Sung-gu surrounded by 3 thugs, and he realized something. The next day, the civil servant announced that a visitor had arrived, and it was the male student who had come to Giltron. When the inspector was about to rush in anger, the minister said that if it was a student, anyone had the right to come to the Department of Educational Rights Protection. Sogan sat down and reported a case of school violence. When he mentioned the name of teacher Choi Gazoon, him immediately shouted, "How dare you mention her name?" The inspector then suggested that Handsome go outside for some fresh air, so the civil servant escorted Handsome out. Afterwards, Gil Chan showed a picture of the chubby boy who was a victim of school bullying. A while later, when Hoa Jine volunteered to handle this case, Handsome looked very worried and asked the minister to stop him. So Hoa Jine immediately said, "If you want to intervene, then intervene with that goose." The father-in-law then stood up to scold him and told him to leave. A little later, the inspector also entered Jinworld High School, but the teacher was very surprised to learn that Sung-gu was a victim of school bullying. On the surface, he didn't seem to have any problems. Then the inspector also saw the chubby boy Sung-gu happily chatting with 3 classmates. After a while, when Sung-gu followed these 3 friends, someone pulled him inside, and the 3 bullies also noticed that the Wi-Fi signal had weakened. In the room, when the inspector told me he'd received a report of a school bullying victim, Sung-gu immediately said, "There's nothing like that at my school." So the inspector searched the chubby boy for bruises and checked his mouth, but found no injuries. When he asked to leave, the inspector asked, "Are you a human Wi-Fi router? You turn on the hotspot so they can use their phones and play games, right? You're always in the center and always the first to pull out your phone. You're also the only one carrying that huge power bank, because you can't let the Wi-Fi get cut off." But, Sung-gu said again, "It really wasn't me. I had something urgent to attend to." At this point, the 3 bullies also entered. When Kaiho asked the inspector if he came to the school because of Chog-chan, the inspector replied, "I came because of you. I heard you're a school bully." Sung-gu then said, "I already said it wasn't me. Please don't falsely accuse innocent people." Then they dragged the chubby guy away. That night, the guy, dressed in a school uniform, went into an internet cafe to investigate Kaiho, but a friend recognized him and asked, "I heard you work for the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection, right?" Kaiho was startled by this, and GE immediately fled outside. After that, he cornered Hanim and said, "I'm doomed." He then put on his glasses, messed up Hanim's hair even more, and asked the inspector to put on her headphones. Then, after finishing the song, he gave Hanim a note and gave him some instructions. Those naive girls absolutely shouldn't look into other people's eyes. A little while later, when Kaiho was about to leave, Him threw a glass of water at him, so he cursed and said, "Don't let me see you again next time." He's truly a clueless idiot. And GE also praised Hazem for enduring humiliation so well. After recording Kaiho's voice through the glasses, the civil servant proceeded to emulate his voice. When Hazem called the chubby Sung-gu, the civil servant emulated Kaiho's voice and said, "If you give me the password, I'll be very grateful." But the chubby guy was suspicious of this gentle tone, so Hazem snatched the microphone and snapped back at him. "Hey, you dog, if I'm not Shiho, then who am I, you idiot?" And chubby Sung-gu also read out the password, so the inspector applauded Hansen. Then, when they logged into Sung-gu's Netflix account, everyone realized that the chubby guy had shared this account with 3 thugs. When checking Sung-gu's ID on the food delivery app, the delivery addresses were in many different locations. He has over 20 recurring paid games. His history of renting electric scooters is also extensive and shows that he is currently using them. When the civil servant said the app notified him that the food was being delivered, the inspector also said he had just logged into the game. So the inspector asked, "So Sung-gu is currently riding a scooter, eating with one hand and playing a game with the other?" The civil servant then imagined himself doing all 3 things at once and falling. So Handsome told him to stop imagining it. That's impossible. Then the civil servant continued, saying there's a forum where people who have been scammed share information. If you search for Sue's ID, you'll find nothing but complaints about people not delivering goods, taking the money, and then disappearing without delivering. So everyone realized they were using Sung-gu's ID to post fake ads on the second-hand market to scam people. Isn't that too cruel to him? At this moment, when Sung-gu came home from school, he saw a thug standing in front of the building. When the thug called, he heard the phone ringing and immediately called Sung-gu a fraud. "You're the one who scammed me out of the AirPods, right?" When Sung-gu said that other people were impersonating his ID, the thug kicked and punched him repeatedly as punishment. The next day, after seeing Sung-gu's bruises, Kaiho said, "Why did you let yourself get beaten up?" Sung-gu replied, "He said he wouldn't leave me alone if I didn't pay. I don't have any money, so could you help me out a bit?" But Kaiho said, "I'm out of money. You sort it out yourself. I told you I'd clean up after you later." It's all your IDs, so you're the only one who's going to get what's coming to you. I said I'll take care of everything for you later, so just wait patiently. Sung-gu then recalled the time when his mother brought him to Kaiho's house and told her, "Your son used my son's account to order food and top up game accounts, and has already paid hundreds of thousands of yuan." But the mother insisted on hearing her son's rebuttal. Just then, Kaiho brought his sister home and asked, "Did you send this video to my sister?" And it was an adult video, so the mother turned to suspect Sung-gu, and the other parent also jumped up in anger. Sung-gu's mother had to turn to him and plead with him, and Kaiho also warned, "If there's a next time, I'll send this video to the girls in our class using your ID." Then the mother chased Sung-gu away. Remembering this, Sung-gu tried to smile and thank him. When the phone rang, Sung-gu had to excuse himself to answer it, but the gang leader said, "Can't you see I'm playing a game?" That sounds like a broken internet connection. But when he saw Sung-gu's mother calling, he let him answer. As soon as the chubby boy answered, he heard his mother cursing him non-stop. Because there were so many bills, his mother asked how many more times she had to pay them for him. "Was this also your fault?" When Sung-gu said it really wasn't his fault, his mother scolded him. "You were humiliated like that before, and you're still lying. Why are you acting like this all of a sudden?" After that, the chubby boy just sat alone, feeling sad and dejected. Suddenly, Gun came over. The next day, Gun took Sung-gu to see the inspector and said he would tell him everything about the harm Sung-gu had suffered from Lai Kai-ho. The chubby boy also said that Gun told him that the Education Rights Protection Bureau could be trusted. And the night before, Gun had said that if there had been an Education Rights Protection Bureau 2 years ago, and if they had come to his school then, he wouldn't have killed someone. Inspector Nahoa Jine is similar to Ms. Choi Gazoon, so things will be different. At this moment, while Sung-gu is writing down Kaiho's wrongdoings, the teacher walks in to inform the inspector. The school violence committee meeting is about to take place, and Kaiho has accused Sung-gu of school violence. A little later, at the meeting, Kaiho sits on the victim's side, while Sung-gu sits on the perpetrator's side. When the inspector entered, Lawyer Run immediately said, "According to the law, inspectors of the Pedagogical Rights Protection Agency are not qualified to be committee members. Please leave." And Hoa Jine also said, "I would only observe." So the chairman of the council said he would not have the right to speak. Then, when the council invited the victimized student to speak, the Lawyer Run immediately claimed that Jang Sung-gu had spread false rumors about El Chiho and even called in a pedagogical rights protection session to accuse Chiho of being the perpetrator. Currently, Chiho is in severe mental shock. We would like to submit her psychiatric examination records as evidence. After reviewing Chiho's anxiety and depression disorder medical records, the council then invited the student who caused the harm to speak. So Sung-gu also stood up and said, "I'm innocent. I'm the victim. They stole my account to scam people, play paid games, and order food." The lawyer then asked if he had any evidence. When Sung-gu hesitated, the lawyer said this was a one-sided statement. This case could constitute defamation. When Sung-gu suggested checking the usage history, the lawyer confirmed it. "I heard that Kaiho borrowed Sung-gu's account a few times because of an urgent matter." When Sung-gu said it wasn't just a few times, the lawyer yelled at him. Then the lawyer continued, saying that it seemed Kaiho wanted to help a friend and had transferred money to Sung-gu. "Check your account." And Sung-gu noticed that Kaiho had just transferred 1 million to him, and Kaiho chuckled. The lawyer, emboldened by this, went further to assert that Kaiho was unjustly framed by Sung-gu Vu. This is not merely defamation of honor but also threatens Kaiho's future. "We will not pursue criminal charges, but we demand appropriate compensation through an agreement." When Sung-gu's mother tremblingly asked how much money it was, the lawyer said that Kaiho's mother was a wonderful person and that all they needed was an apology to end everything. When the meeting ended, the chubby boy's mother bowed and thanked Kaiho's mother, promising that she wouldn't let this happen again. "Thank you for your generosity in forgiving me." And Sung-gu ran away in anger. Later, when the inspector recounted the events of the meeting, Hazem immediately became angry, saying that he had harmed people, that he himself had opened a school disciplinary committee, and even hired an expensive lawyer. "What should we do now?" At school, Inspector Than went looking for Sung-gu, then took out his phone to search for the Wii, and Sung-gu's Wi-Fi signal appeared. After moving around for a while, Inspector Than finally saw the chubby boy sitting at the bottom of the stairs. When Inspector Than touched his shoulder to comfort him, Sung-gu burst into tears. And Inspector Than said that if he just swallowed his tears, no one would know he was crying. "If I don't speak up, no one will know I'm being wronged. If I keep hiding it, they won't know where they went wrong. Are you going to live like this forever?" When Inspector Than stood up and walked away, Sung-gu immediately ran after him and said, "I'm going crazy from being wronged. I've told the police and I've told my parents and teachers, but no one believes me. I also know they were both treating me well and taking advantage of me." Kaiho said she would tell everything and admit she was the imposter, but she kept putting it off. Now she's saying I'm the culprit. Everyone thinks I'm lying. And the inspector said he believes me, so you should also try trusting the Education Protection Bureau. The next day, the female inspector wore a schoolgirl uniform with a mole under her lip, and the civil servant reminded Hanim to wear a keychain to look like a schoolgirl. At this point, when the two accomplices were annoyed because they had lost their personal Wi-Fi router, the fox said they could just find a new one. Then, seeing the schoolgirl talking to the flower, Kaiho recognized her as the naive girl from the internet cafe. When Hazem waved, GE said she should be scared. Seeing the girl's bewildered expression, Kaiho seemed very amused. He then offered to give her a tour of the school. Then, upon discovering that this girl was in the same class as him, Kaiho became even more excited and immediately suggested they become close friends. When Hanim was about to enter the classroom, GE said that the naive girl should follow them. So Hanim suggested that they go into the classroom first. When one of them tripped him, Hanim let out a curse. When Kaiho started laughing mockingly, Zim was about to confront him but was stopped by the civil servant, so Zim gave a silly smile. Kaiho then asked to borrow the Netflix account. Immediately afterwards, the female student gave the three thugs a list of Netflix accounts along with paid streaming and gaming accounts. When Kaiho asked, "Is this Wi-Fi at your old school?" Hazem replied, "My old school called it a hotpot. If the Wi-Fi is too weak, I'll connect you to a power bank. There's an ID and password here too. If you're short on battery, there are plenty of power banks available. And there are charging cables for all kinds of devices. Before class, let me fully charge your phone for you." And these three trusted him enough to hand over their phones and voluntarily unlock them to connect to the Wi-Fi. Then the civil servant sent a link. When Handsome clicked on the link, the process of downloading all the data from the three phones started running. A while later, while they were logging in at the interrogation room, someone else logged in from another computer. When checking the login history, the thug noticed that someone in Colombia was logging into his account. Then the payment messages kept pouring in. On this side, Hanim was reading out the insults so the civil servant could spam messages, so the guy with glasses kept receiving messages retaliating against the insults. When his mother called, the guy with glasses said, "I didn't send those websites with girls to you, Mom." When the civil servant successfully logged in using Lai Chiho's ID, he immediately told the game system that it detected very mild swearing. Depending on the level of swearing, the suspension time could vary. The inspector then suggested that Handsome swear more to keep the account suspended for as long as possible. So him started swearing like a machine and very skillfully, causing the civil servant's ears to ache and tears to fall from his head due to the hurt. Meanwhile, Kaiho realized his account had been locked for 300 years. Later, while in class, Kaiho kept receiving messages deducting payment fees. Even while using the restroom, he noticed his account was registered under the name of someone who had rented a scooter, so he rode his motorbike to the place where the imposter had rented the scooter, but had to climb a very high flight of stairs. After a while, he struggled to carry the scooter down, only to be confronted by two burly men who came to inspect his motorbike. When Kaiho asked them what they were doing to his motorbike, the two burly guys said, "You came here to give me a free ride. Didn't you post a picture of this motorbike and say you'd give me a free ride?" When Kaiho tried to stop them, the burly guy grabbed him by the neck and threatened to beat him, so he said, "It seems like someone hacked my account," but the burly guy still punched him. The next day, Kaiho stormed into the classroom and asked the new female student, "You're up to something, aren't you? You're the one who did something to my phone, and I even ate. If you're being polite, then confess." And Hanim told me to let go while I was still being polite. Then the female student squeezed Kaiho's arm hard and admitted, "I did it." When he swung his fist, Hanim wrestled him to the ground. Just as he was about to pick up a chair, the female student said, "Wait a minute. My throat still isn't clear." Then the female student screamed loudly for help, so the other female students all came in and saw Kaiho bullying a female classmate. And Hazem whispered to Kaiho, "Only by doing this can we open a school violence committee." Then Hazem continued to tremble and scream for help. A while later, at the school committee meeting, the lawyer, trembling, repeatedly asserted that Kaiho was not the perpetrator but the victim. The transfer student hacked Kaiho's phone, causing his game account to be locked, and even committed fraud on the second-hand market. When the council asked if there was any evidence, Kaiho suggested asking the new transfer student. Immediately, the inspector pushed the transfer student inside, her body in a terrible state. And the civil servant also placed the victim label on her. When the trembling lawyer asserted that the inspector had no right to speak, HOA Jain immediately said, "I have a lawyer's authorization letter." When the trembling lawyer asked which lawyer wrote that absurd authorization letter, the inspector showed a picture of Minister Choi Gangsuk and said, "Our minister also has a lawyer's certificate, is a full member of the Bar Association, and the chairman of the council also allowed HOA Zin to speak on behalf of the lawyer." The inspector then said, "Everyone can see how Lai Kaio threatened the victim. Currently, Im Hansem's condition is very serious, and he was even drooling. He just transferred schools and this terrible thing happened to him. He'll suffer lifelong psychological trauma." Kai-ho immediately stood up and said that he was the one who got beaten, but nobody believed him, so he flew over to the table and said to Hanim, "You're perfectly fine, stand up, tell me you're just acting." The inspector immediately twisted this guy's arm and asked, "How do you feel about being in this situation?" And HOA Jine also said that this was actually Inspector Im Hansen. She had been sent to investigate the school violence case involving Jang Sung-gu. Then the inspector waved to the male student Sung-gu. And the male student was also watching through the camera with his mother. Then the inspector said, "We were here to clear Jang Sung-gu's name. Do you remember what you did to Sung-gu?" Kai-ho immediately said, "I was innocent. I hadn't even touched Sung-gu." So the inspector said, "You didn't hit her, but that doesn't mean it wasn't violence. Even though you didn't touch Sung-gu, she was terrified and felt wronged. No one around believed her. Not even her parents." Perhaps it would have been better if Sung-gu had been beaten, because if there were injuries, his parents might have believed him. To escape this situation, Sung-gu had to beg the person who had done it. The victim had to bow down and plead with the perpetrator. When the mother heard this, she took her son's hand and asked, "You've suffered so much, haven't you? I was so stupid. I should have believed my son." And the inspector also said that Lee Kai-ho's testimony in the previous meeting was actually a lie. The real victim was Jang Sung-gu. This has been investigated and confirmed by the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection. We will immediately take protective measures for the victim, Jiang Sung-gu. Furthermore, the previous ruling of the School Violence Committee against Jiang Sung-gu will be completely invalidated. Is it really that difficult to determine who is the victim and who is the perpetrator? Adults must protect children. Aren't you ashamed in front of the children? And the lawyer sat down without daring to say anything. A little while later, Sung-gu's mother nodded in thanks to the inspectors, and the inspector said that the identification number would be reissued to her, so she should study hard. The mother nodded in thanks to Ryuri and promised to raise Sung-gu well. As they walked out, Sung-gu greeted Gan, and Gan also went to talk to the inspectors very politely. But when the inspectors left, Gan watched them go with an unreadable expression. That evening, Kai-ho came up to the rooftop to meet Gan and said, "You said that if we followed your advice, we would win. You said that all we needed to do was hire a lawyer." And before that, Gan had advised Kai-ho, "Just start a school violence committee first. The Education Protection Bureau will do everything to convict you of school violence. You might even get expelled. You have to set up the game first. Whoever reports first is the victim. Contact this lawyer." Now that Gil Chan says everything is going according to plan. Then Kai-ho stepped forward and said, "Because of the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection, my life is over. My whole family is ruined too. Maybe this will only end when I die." Gan then said, "I'm the one who reported you to the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection for bullying Zhang Zhang Ji. Now do you know what will happen to you?" Saying that, he pushed Kai-ho to the ground. The next day, the secretary went in to report to Chairman Hoang that the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection was in big trouble. An incident had occurred while they were supervising Jin World School. Just then, Gan arrived to see the chairman, so the chairman asked his secretary to go outside and make tea. Then Gil Chan showed him the audio recording containing Kai-ho's words from last night. "Because of the Education Rights Protection Bureau, my life is practically over. Maybe this will only end when I die." Gil Chan then used a cloth to wipe away the fingerprints on the recording device and said, "It's up to you how you want to use it, sir." The chairman also saw the news article about the male student jumping from the rooftop of Jin World School, so he asked, "Did you think I helped you get out so you could pull these stunts?" But Gil Chan replied, "It wasn't you who let me out, sir, but I orchestrated everything. I'm the one who dragged you into this. I'm the one who told the prison guard to come see you. Thanks to you, the pardon committee released me early. Thank you very much." When the old chairman started scolding, Gan immediately said that if you want to be president, you have to maintain your dignity and not swear. Anyway, both you and I want to overthrow the protection of pedagogical rights. Then the dangerous male student also walked away. Now Minister Choi also came to visit Lee Kai-ho, who was lying unconscious. When Minister Choi went outside and was interviewed by reporters, Chairman Hoang also entered the hospital and played the audio recording containing Lee Kai-ho's words before he jumped from the building. The chairman began to blame and claim that Lee Kai-ho's predicament was due to the Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection. Then the students in the school intently watched the news reporting on the 5-second audio recording. It recorded Emily Kai-ho's complaint against the Bureau of Educational Rights. And Gan also wore a sign protesting the Bureau of Educational Rights. The civil servant insisted that there were no cameras recording the school's rooftop. Only one camera in the adjacent building captured a portion of this rooftop. But the image quality was very poor. When the video was shown, only Kai-ho's image was visible. The inspector immediately speculated that Kai-ho had been talking to someone, possibly pushed down by someone. A while later, the inspector also arrived at the school. Then Gun came over and asked, "The Education Rights Protection Bureau must be in a lot of trouble, right?" The inspector then asked, "Why did you come back to this school? Why did you deliberately report the school violence? Why are you now calling for the abolition of the Education Rights Protection Bureau? It must be because of this drug, right? Recently it was hat, a type of drug. 2 years ago it was boom, a type of drug. So what is it this time?" Gun immediately said it was a diamond. It seems he doesn't have any evidence yet. If he did, he would have called the police to arrest me. Ms. Choi Gazoon and the inspector are truly a match made in heaven. They're both the same type of meddlesome person. Will the ending for both of them be the same? And before, when Gil Chan dropped out of school, Gazoon waited outside his house, gently applying ointment to his facial wounds and urging him to go back to school. But he just coldly walked inside. The next morning, Gazoon waited with a cake and invited Gun to have breakfast with her. The next time, Ms. Gazoon gave him a can of milk, but received a harsh response. The following time, Ms. Gazoon saw 3 thugs ambushing Gun's house, so Gazoon helped him escape. That day, when his accomplice went through the iron gate and into the secret room to meet Gil Chan, Gun said that thanks to Ms. Gazoon, he realized something. The school has a lot of people, and they are all customers. It's also easy to avoid the police, and drug deliveries are convenient. Every year, we gain hundreds of new customers. The very next day, Gazoon saw Gillen wearing his school uniform, and he promised to study hard from now on, which made Gazoon very happy. Sometime later, while putting books in Gillen's bag, Gazoon saw a packet of pills shaped like bows. When Gillen opened his bag, he read the note, "Do you believe me, Gil Chan?" He couldn't find the pills anywhere else. That's why he attacked Gazoon. Now Gun also said that if she had just pretended not to see it back then, they would probably be married by now. When he saw the inspector preparing to punch him, Gun immediately put on a pitiful act and said, "You can't hit me. The Bureau of Educational Rights Protection is already in a terrible state. If you hit me now, it would be personal revenge." But HOA Jine still punched this fake student, and the students filmed it. Gil Tron, meanwhile, pretended to apologize like a real victim. Chairman Hoang then showed the video of the inspector beating the student to the media and made a statement. It had only been a few days since Lai Kaio committed suicide due to excessive punishment, and yet they were beating another student from the same school. From the beginning, the Education Rights Protection Bureau targeted the shogun at Jin World School. Driven solely by personal revenge, Lee Ho became the sacrificial lamb. "I will definitely dissolve the Education Rights Protection Bureau, which is filled with personal hatred." The news also reported that over 50% of the population demanded the dissolution of the Education Rights Protection Bureau, causing a significant decline in the president's approval rating. After hearing this news, the minister immediately called and said he would come to see the president right away. At this point, upon seeing the inspector, the deluded male and female students began to line up with Gun to form a barrier and simultaneously announce that the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection should no longer come to the school. "We are not criminals or targets of personal revenge. When the inspector told me to come in to investigate Lai Kai's case, Jitron immediately said that you people were the ones who caused Kaiho to end up like that. Will the department conduct a fair investigation?" And the inspector also stepped forward but then stopped. Then Minister Choi also stated to the media that until the investigation into Emily Kai's suicide is complete, the duties of the Education Rights Protection Bureau and the duties of its inspectors will be suspended. Therefore, Handsome couldn't swipe his card to enter the building. Meanwhile, the civil servant was packing his belongings and regretfully looking at his official ID card. When HOA Jine visited the resting place of his deceased wife, he found many sticky notes left by the students. At this time, Gun had a team packing goods in a secret classroom. When his accomplice asked when they would start their business, Gun said they had already taken down the Education Rights Protection Bureau, so they could start now. Send samples to contacts at the schools beforehand to pitch the products. When each school has 100 customers, then we'll proceed with the actual deliveries. There will be many people here who can deliver the goods because they are students, so they won't be suspected. If they get caught, they'll be released quickly. Most importantly, once we are done with them, we can get rid of them immediately. He also looked towards the male student. After a while, he said to the chubby boy, "You and this guy should team up to resell the shoes to earn some pocket money. Lately, customers have been preferring to meet in person because they're afraid of being scammed. You just need to deliver the goods." And Sung-gu agreed. A little while later, Sung-gu delivered a thick box to a young female student from Sun School and received the money from her. After receiving the money, Gun paid Sung-gu his wages and asked the chubby boy to continue delivering the goods. When he opened the door, many male and female students had joined this lucrative delivery job. Thus, the disguised shoeboxes were continuously delivered to different schools. Because of this, during class, The male students were only focused on counting the money they had earned from delivering the goods, causing the teacher to have to reprimand them. A little later, these students were sending each other pictures of the expensive motorcycle, so the teacher asked why the atmosphere was so strange today. At the girls' school, the girl who received the package earlier was planning to lure 2 overweight female students, telling them she had taken weight loss pills and giving them square packets of vitamins. Then, a text message reported that the sales were complete and more samples of the medicine needed to be sent. At Jin World School, the teacher informed Sunggu that Songjun had been in a motorcycle accident. She had to go to the hospital immediately, so Sunggu also informed the whole class about this. One guy immediately shouted, "Songjun worked so hard delivering goods that he actually bought a motorcycle." The other male students immediately gathered around and suggested the idea of delivering goods in place of Songjun to earn extra money, and the teachers also began to worry about the students' constant requests to leave early and skip classes. Their studies were becoming unfocused. I find students really scary these days. Before, there was the Education Rights Protection Bureau, so at least I felt protected. Val also overheard this conversation. At this time, after continuously receiving order messages, his accomplice reported that there were about 17 schools in Seoul, each with about 100 students placing orders. Can then order them to start selling the goods for real today. That's why the delivery students also received instructions via text message, only delivering the goods after the bank transfer was completed. After that, the delivery methods were disguised in various ways. In Sunggu's class, students found all sorts of excuses to leave, surprising Sunggu. Then, the chubby boy saw these truant students leaving in droves, carrying boxes. When Sunggu entered, Gan also handed him a package. As Sunggu walked out of the school, he saw inside the box square packets labeled vitamins, and someone was watching him from above. Meanwhile, Sunggu texted Inspector Hoa Jin to arrange a meeting at the convenience store in front of the school. A while after the inspector went to the convenience store, Sunggu called again. "I had an urgent matter at home, so I went straight home." But in reality, the chubby boy was surrounded by the gang leaders who confiscated his phone. Gil Chan then instructed his henchmen to handle the situation and left the room. After that, all the male and female students from different schools began receiving vitamin packets that had been hidden in many corners of the school. While the young female student was taking pictures of the delivery location to send to customers, someone came and opened these packages, and that person was Ms. Dung, the teacher from the girls' school. When Ms. Dung ran outside, a van arrived, and the teacher also got into the van. A little later, Ms. Dung stood in front of the drug distribution diagram, with Gan as the ringleader. Minister Choi also said that this was a plan secretly prepared by Than Chana Hoa Jin, and Hoa Jin's attack on Gil Chan was also part of the plan. Because to obtain evidence, Gil Chan had to act. To do that, the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights had to be abolished according to his wishes. At that time, when Hoa Jin promised that she would take full responsibility when the plan was finished, Hajim also volunteered to take responsibility. "I could go back to my father Zim's room to work and earn a living." When Han Jim glanced at him and suggested he speak up, the civil servant didn't promise to take responsibility with everyone else. And the minister also declared that I would share the responsibility, so you all should continue with the original plan. Then, when Hanim suggested finding someone to help, the inspector immediately proposed an idea to find someone to help. At this time, Minister Choi was live streaming to talk to teachers in all schools. Currently, we have confirmed that a new type of fake exam paper is circulating among middle and high school students in Seoul. If this drug continues to spread, the school will be destroyed beyond repair. I earnestly hope that the teachers watching this video will cooperate with the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection for the sake of the students. And before that, the students left notes for the late Ms. Gazin. "The school is still in a difficult situation. Teacher, we miss you very much." Reading these messages gave Hoa Jin even more motivation. Then Ms. Dung also wrote a comment in support. "I completely agree and will respond to the call from the Department of Pedagogical Rights Protection." Now, when Ms. Dung asked if other teachers had responded, Hoa Jin said that no one had contacted her yet. But then many teachers simultaneously came and handed over the packages of medicine they had collected at the school. When a teacher asked if this type of medicine had spread throughout the school, the inspector immediately said that would absolutely not happen. And before that, the two inspectors had secretly followed the chubby boy Sunggu when he was delivering the showbox. When Sunggu delivered the package to the schoolgirl from Zuz High School, Hanim was already dressed in her schoolgirl uniform and the civil servant had pinned a hair clip on her to make her face look more presentable. When she went to the restroom, Hanim overheard the two schoolgirls excitedly discussing the weight loss pills. So, when Hanim saw the two female students come out, he slapped the civil servant and staged a scene as if he were robbing them of money. Hanim also told the two female students to stand and witness the robbery. Hanim also asked the male student to hand over the vitamin packets. Hearing this, the The two female students immediately handed over their vitamin packets to quickly escape. Then, seeing that there were too many kids carrying cardboard boxes to deliver and it was impossible to keep track of them all, G told me that he had called in some of the professional robbers to help, and those were the male students from a notorious Google high school. That evening, Zim reported that they had recovered all the sample drugs. Let's move on to the next step. So the civil servant started sending order messages via Telegram. Then Minister Choi showed the media the new type of drug that had been circulating among students. It replaced the drug that the police had classified as a banned drug. This drug was discovered by teachers themselves and handed over to the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection. After tracing the distribution network, we identified the main suspect as Chogul Tron from Jin School. From this point on, the suspension order from the Education Protection Bureau will be lifted, and the inspectors will return to work. Gun's gang is also clearing up all the drugs. Now, the three inspectors put on their name tags. Then, the three of them entered Jin World School. When they showed their name tags, no student dared to stop them anymore. Then Handsome broke the lock on the iron door and rushed into the packing room. But there was nothing left there except for the mortars used for grinding medicine. When the civil servant discovered a locked cabinet, Handsome tried to break down the door, but the inspector saw a string connected to an arrow above it. As soon as the door opened, the arrow shot into the balloon, scattering powder everywhere. The inspector immediately ordered them to hold their breath, but Hanim started coughing because he had already inhaled. Gun and his two accomplices saw the inspector above and taunted him. "If you need more medicine, just tell us." Those idiots and Hazem also said they'll catch them. "I can fly." Then Hazem flew down and used the two thugs as a platform. When the round-faced G was about to rush in to rescue his accomplices, the inspector ran out, so he turned around to run away, and Hazem also said, "Leave it to me." But Hoa Jain noticed that the inspector was acting strangely and was deluded. But the civil servant spoke up, promising to take care of Hanim, so the inspector left, and Handsome confidently declared he would punish these two thugs, then pulled out his phone as a weapon. But in reality, Handsome only hit the air because he was in a daze, so the civil servant opened his toolbox and saw Handsome being repeatedly punched and kicked by the two thugs. Then GE appeared like a superhero and rushed into battle with his armor on while Zim was still fighting with a pillar. Thanks to his modern equipment, the civil servant managed to take down the two thugs. When GE ran to ask if she was okay, Hazem said he was incredibly handsome and leaned on GE's shoulder. Meanwhile, Inspector Than proceeded to chain the door shut to prevent Gil Chan from escaping. Then, a group of thugs called out to Inspector Than, so Hoa Jain ordered them to all attack at once to save time. Inspector Than then subdued each of the thugs one by one. After dealing with them all, Hoa Jain felt a slight backache. Outside, the civil servant was helping Hinjim sit down to rest and recover from his stupor. Meanwhile, Hoa Jin saw Gun standing at the other end of the hallway. When he saw the inspector approaching, Gun said exactly what Kogan had said earlier. And then Gazoon also approached, just like before, and showed Gun the package of medicine and asked what was going on. When the male student asked why she didn't report it to the police, Mizga said she wanted to give him a chance to turn himself in. Gun also said that she hadn't told anyone else yet. He said he would seize the chance she had given him. So he stabbed Ms. Gaz without hesitation and asked, "Why should I turn myself in? I'm a minor, so I'll be released soon. If I'm convicted of manslaughter, I'll only go to jail for a maximum of 2 years. I have an unhappy family and no motive to kill, so I'll say that I loved you." When Ms. Gazoon fell, he picked up the packet of drugs and said, "I can sell this again in 2 years. Thanks to you, I went back to school and realized that school is the best market, but you can't get married anymore." Then Ms. Gazoon also collapsed. At this point, Gillen clasped his hands together and said, "I probably can't win against the inspector from the Education Rights Protection Bureau, can I? It's all my fault. Stay right there, or someone might die at school." As soon as he finished speaking, his accomplice also walked out. Gun immediately took the opportunity to stab the inspector, and the two subordinates also saw this when they looked up at the window. Hazem tried to stand up but was completely powerless. Gun said, "I'll spare Sung Ji-yu. If you see Gazoon, tell her I'm sorry." But Inspector Than held on tightly, so Gil Chan couldn't pull the knife out. Meanwhile, his accomplice stabbed Sung Gu in the leg and showed the chubby guy the scene of the inspector being killed. And Hoa Jain also let go of his arm, so Gun inflicted a few more stab wounds. Seeing this scene made Hansen extremely angry, and he suggested doing something to bring me back to my senses. Up above, Gun also said that this time it wasn't manslaughter and it wasn't justifiable self-defense. "I probably won't be able to stay in this country anymore. But other countries have schools too." Suddenly, Hanim appeared and headbutted his accomplice, then kicked him. The inspector grabbed Gun's hand and slammed his head against the wall, sending him tumbling to the ground. When Gun reached for the knife, the inspector gave him another slap and said, You've missed another chance. After delivering more slaps, the inspector said that all Korean citizens have the right to equal education based on ability. That means we go to school to be happy. Anyone who obstructs that will receive a well-deserved lesson. Then the inspector raised his hand for a final slap. When Gun told me I was wrong, please forgive me, give me another chance, the inspector said that opportunities aren't given by anyone. They only appear when you truly desire them. Gun then remembered Gazoon saying the exact same thing, so he said the two of them were a match made in heaven. Do you know what Choi Gazoon said before he died? Gon, don't do that. Why can't I do that? Don't pretend to care. I don't need that chance, just kill me. I said kill me. And the inspector also raised his fist, but then let go of Gun and repeated his wife's words. Gil-chan, it's okay. Let's start over. This is the last chance the teacher gave Gazoon to give you. Then the inspector struggled to walk away. Gun shouted loudly, what are you people? Are you Jesus or Buddha? And Hua Jin also sat down and said, are you a grown-up kid? Then Hua Jin said to his deceased wife, you did well. And the image of Gazoon also appeared and smiled in praise. Then Hua Jin returned to reality and burst into sobbing tears. Then Hanim ran out and asked if he needed Kim to bandage his wound. Hoa Jin laughed at the question and was pulled up by her junior. A little later, Sung Gu had his wound bandaged in the ambulance. Gun and his accomplices were arrested by the police. And the little girl from Sozan High School was already sitting in the waiting police car. When Gun was brought in, the minister immediately told him that he had violated the law establishing the Bureau for the Protection of Teachers' Rights, the law on the management of examinations, and attempted murder, and that he would be punished. From this moment on, he would be expelled from Jinwell High School. He would never be allowed to return. Then, upon realizing that his son-in-law had been harmed by Gil, the minister rushed to settle the score with the assailant for daring to lay a hand on his son-in-law, and the inspector also requested the police car to leave quickly. A few days later, Minister Choi spoke to the media. Do you all know the meaning of education? It is teaching knowledge and skills while cultivating character. Getting into university and having a good job is very important, but more importantly, it's about cultivating human character. That's the true meaning of education. But currently, the Korean education system has deviated far from that meaning and is in serious disarray. However, the majority of Korean teachers are still fulfilling their mission and trying to guide students in the right direction. After all, how much longer will we have to watch children and teachers pass away forever? Until schools become truly safe places, the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection will continue to protect the values of education as well as protect victims. Until the Korean education system regains its former glory, we will continue to exist. After that, everyone will visit Gazoon's resting place. When reading the notes, the father said that our Gazoon was so lucky that so many people remembered him. When his son-in-law offered him a handkerchief, the father-in-law said, I'm a tearless person. But Hoa Jin said that Gazoon had once said that he cried a lot. The minister then switched to asking about work to interrupt the discussion. Then the civil servant suggested that everyone go downstairs because there was still a lot of work to do. Then, GE unconsciously took Hanim's hand, so the inspector pulled her hand back and asked why she was holding his hand. The civil servant replied, I was afraid she might trip over a rock. He even complained about letting her hold his hand. Seeing this argument, the minister couldn't help but wonder. And Hoa Jin said that the two of them liked each other but apparently hadn't realized it yet. And the night before, when Handsome suggested doing something to help me sober up, GE kissed Handsome on the lips, so now they're both feeling very embarrassed. Sometime later, at a high school basketball team, the ringleader was using a whip to extort affection from the team members. Suddenly, a guy in a suit with a fist walked in, and it was the civil servant GE. And the civil servant also allowed the bullied students to stand up and introduce themselves. I am a civil servant of the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection. From this moment on, the Bureau of Educational Rights Protection will teach you a lesson you deserve. When GE asked the bully to stand up, he had to look up to see his face, so the civil servant stepped back and was grabbed by the gang leader. The other members of the team lay down again, knowing that he wouldn't be able to do anything. The inspector also came out and loudly demanded that everyone stand up. When Hanim rushed forward, the gang leader threw him at the civil servant, causing both of them to fall, and the bullied people lay down again. Finally, the inspector came out, and everyone confidently stood up. Then the inspector reminded us again that students are not allowed to have any power, even if they are representing the nation in a competition. You probably don't know that the educational methods of the newly re-established Bureau of Pedagogical Rights Protection have no limits whatsoever. So I will give you a well-deserved lesson. After that, the two subordinates cooperated to create a platform. Then the inspector also stepped onto the platform to launch a powerful slap. At this time, Chairman Hoang had already been arrested by the authorities. When he ran to attack, The minister kicked him in the arms and legs, causing him to fall. The chairman then promised, "I'll come back and drag you down first." So the minister said that when he received the recording from Gil Chan, he should have stopped. It's because of adults like him that students become monsters. If you can't be a good adult, at least don't be a bad one. When Chairman Hoang asked, "Are you a good adult? Do you think if we investigate you, we won't find anything?" The minister went over, flexed his muscles, and said, "Maybe I'm not a good adult either." Then he punched the chairman in the face. The film ends here. If you enjoyed the content, please remember to like and subscribe to support Nam Mock Review. See you again in other videos.